evening, Mr. Vandervoort. James here. Aren't you early, sir?
We're surprising Mrs. Vandervoort with some jam and scones and picking her up at the spa on the far side. Carry on, James.
You're not Mr. Vandervoort at all. You're some hooligan trying to steal his motor car. Well, I won't stand for it.
Just shut up and drive, James. Head for the far side.
I will give you to the count of 3 before I alert the authorities. 1.
I am very sorry, James. You're too late. I have disconnected your alarm relay.
Oh.
So get moving, Jimmy boy, or you're going to have a speech impediment.
Good God. I'm being stolen.
So many iconic, oh my God.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was John Cleese that I was attempting to do there.
Nice. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Science Fiction Remnant. And you notice that we are chaosless today. I am your host, Robert.
And I am your host, Ray, the mad scientist, well, mad cloning scientist this week, down in South Florida, or otherwise known as Australia. Cracks me up every time I do that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So, how are we going to do it? How are we going to bring the chaos when we don't have the King of Chaos with us? We're going to have to, step it up a notch.
We are. We're going to have to generate our own chaos. It's going to be interesting. The 2 sensible boys have to be chaotic. That's going to be. So, what have you been watching in the sci-fi realm this week, Robert?
Well, I would have to say, Ray, that my wife has no emotion.
Hasn't she? It's a shame.
It's a great anime. I started like iffy on it, but it's cool. I'm like, I keep on waiting. I mean, I am hoping that they buy her the updates or the upgrades that she needs. Because I don't know. Maybe this is not all about the anime. Maybe the whole thing is that she has no emotion throughout the whole thing. But I do hope she gets some emotions eventually. I don't know. Just me.
I'm not convinced she has no emotions. I mean, she just doesn't know how to show them.
Exactly. That's what I actually meant. I got a feeling she has, but she can't show it because of, what was that? One of the upgrades that she wanted that she showed the sister. It was like how many million?
7.5 million yen, which is
I wonder how much.
Which is $7,500, I think.
Wow, that's an Alienware right there. But yeah, I've been enjoying that one so far.
Chaos has actually been reading the manga, and he says the manga's amazing. It really goes into a lot of deep topics about how we're going to deal with robots when they become commonplace. And, Japan is somewhat further ahead in that field than a lot of other countries. And they've been using robots for companion devices for elderly people who have no family. And it seems to be working reasonably well. I mean, a facsimile of, a friend is better than nothing. So, they do have a place. And I mean, it's humanity's just bent in that direction that they've got to anthropomorphize everything, including machines. So we are going to get robots that look like people. There's just no way we wouldn't. And of course, they're going to be used in all sorts of fashions to solve people's problems, if you get what I mean. Wink, wink.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Moving on to the other stuff that I have watched that is related to sci-fi. I am happy to announce that we, quote, unquote, fin- finished Star Trek. We finished Discovery. Um, as you know, with Star
You've
Trek,
run out of Star
you can't.
Trek. Is that
As you
possible?
know, with Star Trek, you can't really say you finished Star Trek because Lower Decks is coming. Strange New Worlds is coming pretty soon. They announced Starfleet Academy. They announced, which I'm really excited about, Section 31. So yeah, we're. I guess the most accurate way that I can say is we finished with Star Trek for now,
Yep.
and we're looking forward for what's to come. So Discovery was really, really cool, really, really cool. I really like the the ending reveal. I although it's old enough and I could mention it, I am not going to mention it on the show because although it's if you don't know by now, you should kind of thing. I think is worth experiencing it. So I'm not going to mention it in on the show. But yeah, that really um, got me off my chair when I got that revealed. So that was really cool. So I guess my wife is really into sci-fi because what did we continue to watch after we finished Discovery?
What?
Well, we have to watch Halo season 2.
I heard that it got cancelled after the end of season 2.
It's a shame. It's such a great show, and I don't know. Is it the nostalgia talking? But it's just it's amazing. And I was just talking to my wife today. We were watching one of the episodes, and you get to see, the Master Chief and all the other Spartans running, and it's amazing to me how not only do they make it, which we already talked about this, they make it look like the game, which is even more nostalgic for people like me who actually played Halo, um, actually most of the Halo games and read most of the Halo books. But they made him look real. That clunky armor, heavy, and how they move really fast. It's the special effects team. I don't know what kind of research they had to do because it looked like someone wearing a heavy piece of equipment like that is able to because humans can't wear it. You'll break every single bone in your body, but they make it look real. How they're moving fast and you can hear the sounds and this stuff is heavy, but yet still moving fast. So it's a really a great show, and it's a shame that it got canceled.
I remember playing
But
Halo 2 and he's like, "Oh, we need to get to that ship over there." "Oh, okay." Jumps out the airlock and just free falls towards Earth. It's like, I'll get to the ship eventually.
I remember, yeah, it's such a great thing. I've been playing after you watch this show, you want to play Halo. So, what do? I got my Halo Infinite and started playing it. So, yeah, and so that's I guess you can include as part of this whole thing Halo Infinite because I've been playing it lately too. So, and that's everything related to sci-fi
Cool.
for me.
Sounds like you had a good week. It's
Yeah.
strange that you can't find any new Star Trek to watch. It's like, really? Hey, do you know how long you've been at that rewatch?
I wonder. I'm gonna have to look for
703 days.
Really?
I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we included all the TV shows, all the animation. Yes, we watched the TOS animation,
Wow.
which I don't know why people say it sucks, but that thing is amazing. I really enjoyed it, and my wife did enjoy it too. I was a little concerned because it has aged.
Oh, yeah.
So when you look at it, it looks really old. It kind of reminds you of those old Hanna-Barbera, comics that we used to watch in like Saturday morning cartoons, kind of like
the really old superhero ones like Spider-Man and Hulk and stuff.
Yeah.
They were sort of
So
partially animated, some full animation. Bits of the bodies were
I
always stationary.
I read. It's a shame I don't have a reference, but I read a while back that the reason why they not only enjoyed working on the animated series for TOS, but also made such great stories, is because they did not have the studios on their back.
Ah,
Since it was an animation, they were free to explore, the story, and to explore So, if you have never watched the TOS animated series, I would encourage you to like watch a couple of episodes and get into the story. It is kind of hard to get into the animation considering that it looks very old, but get into the story. If you're into Star Trek, you're gonna enjoy the stories.
cool. Yeah, I mean, you got to, give it a break. It's not well animated, and it's not recent. So you've got to look at it through a different filter. But I highly agree with
Yeah.
you. Like some of these oldie goldies are hugely impressive in their way.
Yeah.
So what have I been watching this week? Well, my wife also has no emotion. It's such a great anime. This week she was going off to be upgraded, and he was going to be without her for 2 weeks, and you could feel his anxiety and his sadness that he was going to be missing his robot wife for 2 weeks. And it was very interesting that the company treats the robots differently depending on how the owner sees them. Nominally, you either buy it as an appliance or you buy it as a family member. But if you buy it as a family member, you get a completely different treatment to as if you buy it as an appliance. So it's up to how it's viewed by the owner, not the fact that it's a robot, which I thought was very interesting.
When you mention that, it sounds to me like very smart from the company
Oh,
side
definitely.
in a way, because it's all about the money. Does that make sense? Like if you treat it like a family member, you're gonna treat this person and do whatever, and hopefully sell more stuff. Because if you're like treating it as an appliance, that's really not much you're gonna need. I mean, this has a function and it does it, and that's it.
Well, the way they pitched it in the show was that if the humans were treating the robot as a family member, then if they erased its memory, because there was a problem with the software and they erased its memory, then you would end up with lawsuits for basically murdering a family member. And they would be chased to the ends of the earth with lawsuits and shit like that. So they were very smart in realizing that the context of robot as family member is completely different to robot as appliance. They can do whatever the shit they want with an appliance, even throw it out. Don't throw out a family member.
Yep.
So it's a very, very interesting take. And I think Gio's right. I think I'm going to have to go and read the manga. And because he says that there's more covered in the manga as far as these deep sort of topics on robots and what sort of place they're going to take up in the world when they become, more common, more affordable, and more like us. So it will be a very interesting time.
Since I have the subscriptions, might as well take advantage of it. I bought them because of Kaiju number 8. Who has the manga? Do you know?
Don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to Google it.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wonder if you knew, because I have Shonen and the other one. I got a subscription for both, so I might as well just use it.
Well, Gio's been reading it, he said, so you just check with him.
Cool. I'll do that.
So besides that anime, My Wife Has No Emotion, which is very sci-fi. I mean, it's really good. there's a channel on YouTube now. Gotta just make sure that I can find it. I should have had this pulled up. Well, actually, there's a number of them. There's one called SciFi Law Vault, and I think it's HSY. Oh God, my son's been using my account. There's a million things here that are useful. Sci-Fi Realm. Where are you hiding? God, he watches all of YouTube.
These are the ones you pasted on our Discord, right? The
HFY Sci-Fi, it's called. HFY Sci-Fi, that's the channel. I listened to a couple of really good stories. The first one was everything is a weapon to a human. Now, the way a lot of these stories are pitched is that humanity is either uncontacted because they're not interplanetary, or they're a very recent addition to interplanetary species, and these other advanced races are still trying to understand what their position might be in the galaxy and all that sort of thing. But everybody else is way more powerful than they are. So everything is a weapon to a human was basically a story. Now, I don't want to spoil, because when I got to the end of the story and worked out who the 4 people they picked up from Earth was, I burst out laughing. Now, for people who didn't grow up in the 70s and watched the particular TV show in question, you may not understand the reference, which is a shame, because it was a great show. I don't want to mention what it is because it's a huge spoiler. And of course, this isn't our topic, so I don't feel like we should spoil this one. But go and have a listen to Everything is a Weapon to a Human. It's only about 30 minutes long. What I normally do is I put it on my bone conduction headphones, and I'm either doing yard work or something like that, and listening to audio stories. And yeah, these ones are full on sci-fi, and they're full on awesome. It's like humanity's the underdog, but we have traits that the rest of the aliens don't have, and like we just kick ass. There's another one called Everyone Cowered in Fear Except for the Humans, and I love that. I love that one. That one full on had me cheering, because you get these stories that get you emotional, where there's some big bad coming down and there's a bunch of guys who are sure they're going to die, and then the humans show up and save them. And, it gets me emotional, because I really feel like it shows the better side of humanity. And that's the part of humanity where we should focus on and work hard on. Because, if we do, actually get out there and interact with aliens, hopefully they're friendly-ish, at least they're not outright militant, and hopefully we can show our better side to them and not just be complete pricks. Rule number 1 of the internet: don't be a dick. I think it's probably rule number 1 of the galaxy. So we can stick to that. I'd appreciate it. That's a hint, NASA. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed those stories, and there's other ones there too. That's the 2 that really struck a chord with me, but there are a whole bunch of other ones. So check those channels out that I mentioned. You can sort of listen to them while you're driving, or while you're doing yard work, or something that doesn't require a lot of brain space, and keep yourself into sci-fi while doing something else that would otherwise be boring. So that's how I keep going. And the last thing on my list this week was a little anime that I was put onto by Doc Joe. If you remember our Logan's Run episode, my good friend Doc Joe was on there. He loves his sci-fi stories, and I'd love to have him on again. He particularly wants to do The Thing with Kurt Russell, and but he has trouble recording at this time, unfortunately. So he's at work at the moment. So but it's called Astra Lost in Space. It's not a recent anime. I think it's like 2018 or something like that. But it's, in a future where interplanetary or intersolar system travel is quite a regular thing. A group of high school students go off for a 5-day camp on a particular planet, get sucked into this ball thing and end up 5,012 light years away from where they started. And they're floating in space on the orbit of a planet. Luckily, they put their space helmets on before the thing sucked them in. And they managed to get aboard this derelict spaceship. And they got to fly the spaceship back to, where humanity lives, because they're a long way away from it. So it's a bit like that other show, Lost in Space, which is on Netflix. It's kind of a bit like that, or the Lost in Space movie, if you remember that one from early 2000s.
Love it.
Or the original Lost in Space, which was in the 1960s. So Lost in Space has been done a few times, and this is a sort of another take on that. But instead of being a family and hangers-on Lost in Space, this is a group of high school kids. So it's interesting. I was told that it had some great drama in it. I've watched a couple of episodes, and I'm going to continue watching. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, and let me know if it's Robert safe.
Seems to be so far. Nobody's been exploded or anything.
Okay. Because, in space, no one can hear you scream.
Or explode. Unless you're in a fighter. Somehow that works.
Yeah, that tagline kind of has a ring to it, in space, no one can hear you explode. Yeah. Nice. Okay, should we move on to the next section? We are Science Fiction Remnant.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is SciFi.
So, this is SciFi is a hashtag that my good friend here, Robert, created. And the basic idea of it is to get everybody out of their little IP silos, where they're just looking at the one IP of sci-fi, which isn't a terrible thing, but it's kind of like eating the same meal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for your entire life. If you do that, you're going to get bored. It doesn't matter how much you like it. Eventually, your taste buds are going to rebel. And your sci-fi taste buds are no different. They need a little bit of a variety. And there's a lot of sci-fi out there. I'm amazed. Every time I go looking on streaming services, I just go, I never heard of that movie. Where did that thing come from? There's just so much of it. So get out there and check stuff out. And this is a way to do it. Check out the This is Sci-Fi hashtag on all your socials and see what's being shown there. This is also a way for creators to get their sci-fi out there. Amateur and semi-professional writers, people who create their own video things like Aliens Monday, which I mentioned in the previous podcast, which is a one-man show, 20-minute long story, which was absolutely amazing for production values for a single man job. It took him 5 years to make it, and it's a great little story. It got my sci-fi juices flowing for wanting to see Romulus, which is coming out soon. So check out the This Is Sci-Fi hashtag. It's a very interesting group of people, both creators and people sharing their favorite sci-fi. And we also have a website, which is thisissci-fi.net, which you can check out to get some ideas of perhaps something else that you can see, watch, read, or play. Do you have anything in the This Is Sci-Fi this week, Robert?
Well, the only thing is there has been me and Gio were on a show.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys know, you know. It was our very good friend Ro from Scarif Podcast who invited us to talk about what's about the science in science fiction, or like we mentioned in the show, scientific.
Yeah. I was so sad that I was at work when you were doing that. I was like,
Yeah, it was last minute. I almost couldn't make it. I was working on that day. I was really tired. But um I figure, you know what? We haven't talked to our very good friend Ro for a while, so I kind of pushed through, and it was a great conversation. It was only about 30 minutes. Just look up for Scarif podcasts on your feed and download. It was a great conversation. I really really enjoyed it. Can't wait to have Ro with us on this show one more time. I think it was on this show. Was it season one? I think it was season one that we had him on. But yeah, it was a great conversation, and I encourage everybody to download that episode. And he's been posting about that episode on This Is SciFi hashtag, as well as our very good friend Chrissy from Madison on the Air. If you guys have not watched or listened to her episode, I encourage you to. We are big fans.
oh, yeah.
We had her on this show to talk about what released. I think her latest release was The Forbidden Planet. Great episode. If you haven't heard it, you can go to her feed and go listen, take a listen. It was a great episode. We are going to release it on this feed as well. But we also have, which by now you probably have heard this episode, The Forbidden Planet, where we invited her to our show to talk not only about the film, but talk about a little about her version of, not necessarily the film, the version that she did it from. It was a radio drama, which was great as well.
And she's Australia, no less.
Exactly. And they are being posting to that. This is a SciFi hashtag, as well as many others. We have writers, we have podcasters using the feed. So it's great fun if you are a SciFi fan.
Oh, definitely. And of course, this is a good opportunity to mention our hotline. Hotline. Hot. But if you'd like to call our hotline, it's 1-305-563-6334. That's 1-305-563-6334. Drop the 1 if you're in continental United States. And of course, basically, you can give us a call, leave us a message, and tell us whatever you'd like to tell us about SciFi, about our show. You can pan Chaos if you like, because he's always waiting for a 1-star review. He says that he's not famous until he gets one, so help him out there. And we will play your message if you're willing on the following show that we record, and we'll talk around it. So if you listen back to some of our more recent episodes, we've had messages left, and we really appreciate that contact, and we'd love it if you would like to leave us a message yourselves. So think of something and give us a call.
Awesome. Okay, so Chaos is not here. So I guess let's see if I do him justice on his segment.
Shout out.
And on this segment, we like to shout out people that have actually engaged with us recently. There has been a lot of engagement, and I believe that if I mentioned everyone that has engaged with our show since our last recording, we'll probably have to add another hour to this episode. And since we're a lone format, it was very hard for me to pick. So I like to start with Cinema Recall. Our very good friend Vern, thank you so much for the engagement. He's always always tagging our show and engaging with our account. So we really, really appreciate it. And we can't wait to have you in this show. We're still. I know we talked about having him on the show. We haven't. Our schedule has it has not planned out yet, but we're still trying. We'll make it happen. Of course, we already talked about Ro from the Real Scuttlebutt podcast. Thank you so much for the engagement, not only with the account, but also with the This Is Sci-Fi hashtag. E. Lee Zimmerman from sci-fi-history.net. If you're not familiar with it, I invite you to just open up your browser and type in sci-fi-history.net. If you are a sci-fi fan, like we are, and if you're the type of sci-fi fan that enjoys our show, I guarantee you will like that website. So I encourage you to go type it in, look it up, and let us know what you think. And thank you, Ely Zimmerman. We really appreciate the engagement, not only with the account, but also with the hashtag This Is Sci-Fi. We also have to thank Jacked Up Reviews Show podcast. Thank you so much for the engagement. We really appreciate it. Really, really appreciate it. And we have obviously Kevin from the podcast That Wouldn't Die. We have had them on our show a couple of times. Really, really appreciate their. If I want to say, who's number one on This Is Sci-Fi hashtag, I would say would be Kevin. Thank you so much for the great engagement with a hashtag. We really appreciate it. And of course, we already mentioned this, but Chrissy from Madison on the Air, thank you so much. Like we mentioned, if you have heard our episodes, whenever we have it online, you already know we're all fans. So thank you so much, not only for providing great content, but also for the engagement with that account. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate it.
I tell you what, you're putting a bit of pressure on yourself calling your podcast the podcast that wouldn't die, because if you felt like you wanted to take a break or, like move on to something else, you'd feel really bad, wouldn't you?
It wouldn't die.
It wouldn't die. No. Well, you can't let it die. I don't know if it wouldn't die. But...
Oh. So, okay. So that concludes the shout out section.
You did pretty good. I'll give you 8 out of 10.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Awesome. So, I guess we can move on to the next segment. That segment is
the Alita Army News.
Every time you do that, it's like, how do I follow that up? Oh, dear. So this week, Radio Chaos was episode 225. My God, we just keep pounding out the episodes of that show. So the live stream was the first live stream of August. So of course, it was a manga live stream. And we started a new Takabon volume of the original Viz release of Gumu, or Battle Angel Alita in the West. And it's the Angel of Chaos. And it was Inherit the Skies Mission 1 Earthbound. So in that particular section, recently Figure and Alita had got together, and she'd gone off with him to his home on the California coast. And they spent some time there, and then she had to leave because, of course, her life is not her own. It belongs to Tafaris, and they all Zalem, depending on which version you're reading. And she had to go back to chasing down Nova. And of course, Nova being Nova, he's always putting the thumb screws on her to test her karma. So she was attacked by ninjas, cyber ninjas, and she beat them off. And she got. We were introduced to 2 new characters in this chapter. The first one was Lou, who is a Tafarian, or a Zalamite, depending on how you look at it, who is now her new controller. and they seem to get along pretty well. So Alita was heading off to see the barjack to get some information on where Destinova might be. And at the end of the chapter, we got introduced to Den, who was just wrecking face against the greatest Colosseum gladiator from the Scrapyard / Iron City. So it was an interesting chapter. I quite liked it. And I highly recommend that if you're into manga at all, and of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you're clearly interested in sci-fi. And of course, a major part of sci-fi these days is cyberpunk. So if you're into dystopian cyberpunk, you should really give the Battle Angel Alita manga a try, because it is really good. And there's way more to it than the one movie that we have at the moment. So check it out.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so
there was this little movie in 2002. I remember it. I really liked it.
I want to say I was really nervous when I bring it up.
Really?
Only because every time I bring this movie up, which, by the way, I really, really enjoy. I actually own a copy.
Me too.
I can tell you how many times I rewatched this. But with that same love for this film that I have, you tend to think that, everybody else around you feels the same way about the one thing that you feel, because you can't think anybody else behaving any other way. And every time I bring it up to anyone, and of course I'm going to generalize here, which typically is not the case, right? But for the most part, the common word that I hear is sucks. This movie sucks. I don't understand it. I showed my wife for the first time. She doesn't understand it. So that's the reason why I was a little nervous when I brought it up to you guys and see if we could make an episode on this.
And how did I react?
I was very pleasantly surprised with your response. Which is not the typical response that I get.
So I will sort of paraphrase how it went. Now, I had been meaning to put this on our record list because I really like this movie. And then Robert he's testing the waters with his little pinky toe. And he's like, hey, guys, what do you think about doing Pluto Nash next week? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Awesome movie. And he's like, really?
I was really like, it's one of those, like, you press the button and you go like, I just pressed it. What's going to happen? Is it going to explode on my face? And then I was like, what? Really? Yes, I'm all up for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed this film. It's one of those sci-fi films that I watch, and it's not necessarily, although it does give me like space to think what our civilization would be like if we had the moon as an extra place for humanity to thrive. But in general, it's not like my typical sci-fi where I would like really think deep about topics. Although I do, this film has been, to me, just plain fun. It's a lot of fun to watch. And I think that's the main reason why I watch this film as much as we do. But we'll get into the deep thoughts during this show. But before we continue,
just before you go there, I just wanted to add a couple of comments to what you were saying there. Now, this is where I disagree with Robert. They had a really good science advisor on this movie.
Oh, yes, they have
it's fun, but it's quite accurate, I feel. And that made the fun more fun for a science nerd like me, because I wasn't sitting there going, well, that's stupid. Why are they that doesn't make any sense? There was none of that. I mean, the science checked out, so I didn't have to be always thinking, well, why would they be doing that makes no sense. Well, why are they saying that? I mean, you can go and just about anything they say that's science related, you can go and check it out, and you'll find that either it's factual or it's theoretically believed to be possible. So I feel that they did a really good job on this movie, and as some sort of metadata, it was released on the 16th of August 2002. It's 95 minutes long. The budget was 100 million. So, yeah, I mean, for 24 years ago, it was a reasonable budget. It wasn't a huge budget. And the box office was a disappointing 7.1 million. It is believed to be one of the biggest box office bombs in the last 40 years. So, yeah, I mean, it got hammered on Rotten Tomatoes and review sites, and nobody showed up. I don't know what was being released at the same time, but obviously there was other options. I must admit, I didn't see it at the cinema. I found it on DVD release and loved it. Bought the DVD straight away. So yeah, I mean, I think that we're both in agreement here, Robert, when I say that we found it enjoyable and fun and scientific-y.
Well, let me say this comment. I think we agree on this comment. The science was so down to earth that it made it feel possible and natural and part of what, because I think I know where you're going with this, and I've seen this. There's some sci-fis that I have watched that I have to like, what, really? And then I have to put that in disbelief to enjoy the film, because that going wasn't really cutting it. And this one, I didn't feel that at all.
It felt natural. They'd spent a lot of time making it work logically, and you know, it's sci-fi comedy, so you kind of feel like they wouldn't necessarily bother to get that deep into making it logical, but they did, and that's what gave it a really good foundation. And it's one of the reasons I really like this movie, that you can't fault it for its scientific accuracy. So you can just sit back and enjoy it for what it is, and enjoy the comedy, enjoy the futuristic feel, without feeling like you got to grind your teeth and ignore some things. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great little movie, and I'm kind of shocked that everybody else in the universe hated it. I don't know why.
Yes. I mean, I guess I can mention this. I guess there was an interview, I think it's a while back, with Barbara Walters, where Eddie Murphy actually poked fun of himself with this film, because, I mean, he had to put some money out of his pocket to complete it. Right? Because they basically went outside the budget. And he says, I know the 2 or 3 people that like this movie.
Well, there's 2 of them here.
Well, I wonder where the third person
Your
is.
wife.
Because I them.
Your wife.
There you go. The 3 people are accounted for.
Oh, dear.
But you know, it is a question I want to, before we move on to the plot, it is a question that I want to put out there. If you once you listen to this episode, reach out to us and let us know which band are you in? Are you in the this movie sucks, or are you in this in the band of this movie it was a lot of fun? I'm kind of wondering, because just prove me wrong that there are people out there. Every time I talk to someone, all I get is this movie sucks. So please, I need more people who like this film.
So a lot of people are bandwagoners, I find. If the consensus, like they'll go online and they'll go, oh yeah, this movie got panned, I'm not going to watch it, or Oh yeah, I won't watch it, but I'll rabbit and repeat what other people are saying about it, just to be on the bandwagon. Excuse me. And I find that to be really pathetic, actually, that you haven't formed your own opinion. You're just taking up the opinion of the masses. And that sort of thinking has caused so many problems over the history of mankind that you just can't imagine. So really, go in and watch it. You can watch it on Tubi for free in the US. So, you have to VPN into the US if you want to watch it. But you can watch it on Tubi, and give it a chance. Just don't go in with expectations, and just see what you think. It may not be for everybody. I mean, it's basically Beverly Hills Cop on the moon.
Yes.
Space Beverly Hills Cop. Put space in front of anything, and it makes it better. That's my personal opinion. But I was always a Eddie Murphy fan. I loved Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop 2, and his other action comedies. I thought he was a great actor, and and this is one of those ones that I hold up there and go, yeah, I really liked it. I enjoyed it. And rewatching it last night, it reminded me again how much I really enjoyed this movie. So, it's not inherently bad. I'm good at picking holes in things. I've had a lot of practice now being on this podcast. And,
oh, yeah.
For an example, I really dislike Blade Runner 2049 for a multitude of reasons. The main one being that the story sucked. So it was unsatisfying. I didn't like it. It had a lot of good points in it, but overall the package was a letdown for me. And that's my personal opinion on that. And my personal opinion on this one is that this is a better movie than Blade Runner 2049. And that's my personal opinion. But I could give you lots of reasons. And you may or may not agree with them. But don't just jump on the bandwagon and don't just believe the hype. Give this movie a chance. Give it a watch. It won't cost you anything. It'll cost you, an hour and a half. But I think it's entertaining, and I think it's a good movie. So give it a chance. You can go off and watch it right now, and we'll wait and come back because we're about to spoil the shit out of it. And there are a few reveals in this movie that make it fun. And if you were to be revealed upon them before you watch the movie, it will make the movie less enjoyable. So go watch it, come back, and then we'll deep dive into it. I'll give you 10 seconds of thinking music. Do, 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 do. Okay, you've watched it. You've come back. Excellent.
10 minutes later.
Yeah.
I want to add to what you said that in this film, I wonder if people saw that it was under budget by, was it 95? Is it 95?
93.
Million?
93.
93 million. I wonder, people, because there's a stigma when someone says this is one of the biggest flops when it comes to money.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that played a big part until this movie really flopped. I mean, no other movie out there has flopped as much as this one did. So I'm not going to watch it. I wonder.
I think there's a lot of people who've dissed this movie without giving it a chance. I really do.
I mean, was it Alec Baldwin? Alec Baldwin disliked this film so much that he insisted to be uncredited.
Yeah.
I mean, he only had like a video appearance. He didn't have like like an active role. It was just kind of like a monitor in the screen where you see him on. That's how he appears on this film. But I honestly don't see it. I mean, maybe he has a reason. I mean, he definitely have a complete different perspective being an actor than I would ever have, because I never acted anywhere. But I don't. I don't see it.
It's all about your perception in the media. If he was credited in a movie that did that badly, then he feels like it would reduce his personal value, and that's why he wanted to be uncredited.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's a very shallow perspective. I mean, I just don't. I don't know why so many reviewers bombed it so harshly. I don't think it deserved it. And, it might have been one of those bandwagon things where, it got panned by a couple of people and then everybody else just said, oh, we'll just say the same thing, save ourselves some time. And they just basically sunk it before it ever had a chance. I would think that if you got 20 sci-fi lovers who've never seen this movie and don't know anything about it and sat them down in front of it, I'd say 60+% of them would enjoy it. But, their minds have been poisoned by reviewers and all the other stuff going on the internet. And they've just basically checked out of it before giving it a chance. And it's a real shame because I think it's a good movie.
He got 3.9 stars on IMDb. That's out of 10, by the way.
I thought it was out of 5. I was thinking, like, that's terrible.
Out of 10.
Hang on. Wait a minute. It's not so good.
And I'm going to look at, I'm almost afraid to look at Rotten Tomatoes.
It's got 4.2 out of 5 for 69 ratings on Google.
What was that?
It's got
4.
It's a 4.2 out of 5 on Google for 69 ratings.
See, that makes me feel better. Yeah. That makes me feel better. I just opened up Rotten Tomatoes. The tomato meter. Oof.
5%.
5% out of, is that out of 100?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And audience score of 20%. Yeah, I disagree.
Well, you can usually tell if it's some sort of conspiracy going on to sink the thing. If the reviewer score is way lower than the audience score. I'm just trying. The page doesn't want to load for some reason. But do you have the audience score there?
Yeah, I kind of read the audience score. But see, I was just thinking about what you said, and this has an audience score of 20%. Typically, the audience score matches my likes on the film. Yeah. So, like, I seen it. Well, maybe the tomato meter is 40%, and then audience score is 90%. Right? I seen that a lot. In this one, it is a little higher, the audience score, but it still doesn't make any sense. 20% out of 100.
I feel that that is lambasting. I mean, it says the critical consensus: this Adventures of Pluto and Nash is neither adventurous nor funny, and Eddie Murphy is on autopilot in this notorious box office bomb. That's a lot of shit, as far as I'm concerned. He was not on autopilot. I really quite enjoyed it. It had some very funny scenes, and like even the quote that I picked with John Cleese as a motor vehicle that cracked me up. So maybe you've just got to have a particular sense of humor and a particular like of sci-fi in your humor. And it just didn't work for the reviewers who were all it's got to be highbrow and pretentious, and it wasn't at all. So
I wonder, you mentioned that, and I was kind of wondering if it actually just ticks all our boxes. Because, like, for example, you mentioned the level of comedy. What my level of comedy might be completely different than yours or Gio's or my wife's, which makes sense. We're all individuals.
I'm not.
So I wonder.
Sorry, I'm quoting Monty Python there.
You're a cyborg. Yeah. I wonder if I'm just talking about comedy, but we're talking. This film has a lot of boxes that they need to film. Like story wise and special effects and how how good is the sci-fi and how is the comedy, and maybe all those factors are waving towards one side of the spectrum that is not necessarily the mainstream. And maybe that's the reason. I'm just trying to make sense of to why I love this so much and everybody hates it. But it would make sense if it gears towards one spectrum, which is the spectrum that maybe favors my personality, as to why I like this so much.
Yeah, maybe. Do you want me to hit the plot up?
Yes, please.
Give these folks the plot. In 2080, which is a reasonable amount of time to think that we could have colonies on the moon. I mean, we've got another 55 years. So I'd be 110 when this kicks off. So that could be a little difficult for me to be still around, but it's a reasonable amount of time to have colonies on the moon. So in 2080, there is a colony on the moon called Little America. Businessman, entrepreneur, retired smuggler, and ex-convict Pluto Nash buys a nightclub in an attempt to fulfill his longtime wish and also to prevent the murder of the club's previous owner and his old friend, Anthony Frankowski, by mobsters Gino and his nephew Larry. With the help of his friend Miguel and an android named Bruno, Pluto cleans it up and turns it into a very popular nightclub. 7 years later, in 2087, a young woman named Dina Lake, the daughter of a friend of Pluto's, Nikky Sticks, is stranded on the moon and needs to earn money for transport back to Earth. Pluto gives her a job as a server. Pluto is accosted by Morgan and Kelp, henchmen of the mysterious entrepreneur and businessman Rex Crater, who wants to buy the club. When Pluto refuses, the henchmen use bombs to destroy the club. Pluto, Dina, and Bruno manage to escape. Pluto's friend Roland, a retired police detective who also knows Pluto's mother, Flora, learns that Rex Crater has associates linked to human cloning. While Pluto and Dina investigate further, Crater's assassins strike, but Pluto and Dina escape by hijacking a limo driven by a holographic chauffeur named James, played by John Cleese, who was awesome. That was our quote when I was still in the car. Their investigation further links Mike Zoroaster Morricelli to Crater. He was played by Alex Baldwin. They are again attacked and chased by Crater's henchmen. They barely escape and then are rescued by Felix Lagana, a local smuggler who idolizes Pluto Nash. They infiltrate Crater's casino hotel at Moon Beach. Pluto finally confronts Crater, reveals himself to be a clone of Pluto. Crater has shot both Morcelli and Dr. Runa Pendlekin into orbit and established his own criminal enterprise. When Morgan and Kelp arrive, Crater kills them for their incompetence. He then fights Pluto, with Crater ultimately being thrown through a window to his death. Sometime later, a celebration is held at a fully renovated Club Pluto, where Dina puts on a performance as a singer, with Nash, the owner, once again, and he gets Bruno, his robot, to be the manager, and he's very excited. Then you roll credits. Now, that's actually quite a thin plot. There were bits of it that they left out there, like them hiding in a smuggler den and gunfight at another club called Absolute Vacuum, I think was the club name. And it was a gunfight at the Paradise Palms, I think it was the motel. So there's a whole bunch of scenes they kind of left out there. But yeah, that was the very, very thin plot. They left a lot of stuff out. It's actually one of the thinnest plots I've ever seen for a movie on the wiki, so that's surprising. But yeah, I mean, it's not a bad plot. Eddie Murphy doing his humour is, I always find quite enjoyable. It flowed well. The visuals were quite on point for what I think a private rather than governmental lunar colony would look like, with heaps of advertising and go-go girls and all sorts of things there, like dance clubs and all the stuff that sort of attracts people to have a good time were there. And I thought it all hung together really well.
Yeah. I was I'm kind of reading through this thing because I'm still like it kind of makes no sense to me. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes of this film that like Eddie Murphy not promoting it, bickering between Eddie Murphy and the director. I don't know. I just wonder if all that thing helped taint this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put that out there, though. If you're listening to this episode and you please reach out to us and let us know what you think of this film. I mean, did you I guess if you've seen it, you listen to this episode and then go back and rewatch it. Did this change your perspective on the film? Because I'm wondering if, like you said, Ray, if people went in initially with all the negativity that this film brought, and that in essence changed their perspective as to why they feel this movie sucked. Do you think? Or
yeah, no, look, I would like to hear from a few people, even people who seriously disliked it. I'd like to know why. If you say, "Oh, I read that it was bad, so I don't like it," that is not a reason. Please go away. That is you bandwagoning, and that science fiction lovers should not bandwagon. They should make up their own minds. Now, if you say, "I just liked it for this, and this reason," and I listen to those reasons, I go, "Yeah, sure, that's your opinion, and you're welcome to it." I don't have a problem with that. But if you just say, "I didn't like it because everybody told me it was bad," it's just like, well, you're a sheeple. So go away. Go back to your flock.
And again, I mean, we talked about this multiple times on the show. I really enjoy the different perspectives. You might have a perspective that I have not considered.
Exactly.
And I would definitely enjoy to see this through your eyes and a different perspective. But I do agree with you, Ray. To have a perspective, you have a reasoning behind it. Because that's one of the things, like when I go and look at some of these reviews, their reviews and we're talking about reviews from like what Rotten Tomatoes, for example. Let me just pick one. Because there's reviews in every site you go for reviews in here. But just to pick one, there's a top critic. I'm not going to name because, I just, it's not the point. But it was a single line, right? It says, "Is it as bad as all that? ? Answer, oh, yes." And that's the review.
That's not a review. That's an opinion.
So, yeah. I mean, someone is talking about the budget. it's just I'm been looking for perspectives and I can't find one.
See, they were all bandwagoning. That's what I said. A couple of people said it was bad, and everybody else just got on the bandwagon and didn't consider it, didn't actually watch it. I mean, the same thing happened with Alita Battle Angel, that it was panned. And when the audience score was like 94% originally, and they were only giving it like 56, and then they started inching it up to get it out of the bad section into the slightly better section, because they didn't want, to be a 30-40 plus difference between the two scores, because obviously there was things going on at the time with the merger where they didn't want the film to succeed because the merger would have cost more. So basically Disney said, bury it. And Hollywood buried it. But it was so good that the people watched it anyway.
Yeah. I guess we're at the point of the show where we ask that question.
Ooh, that question.
That question.
Ooh.
So the question that we normally ask if you're new in the show is, how old were you when you watched this for the first time, and what was your very first perspective? I want to say, if you allow me to go first,
Sure.
I want to say, just like you, I was not a lucky one that watched it in the theaters. I think this would have been a spectacle to watch it in the theaters. As a matter of fact, I might have to dust off my projector and maybe make it a movie night one of these days and watch it on my projector and just kind of like popcorn. But I watched it on video release, and I remember that exactly what I just said. I remember thinking this would have been a great movie to watch at the theaters. Maybe because Eddie Murphy wasn't promoting it. Maybe there wasn't a big thing on promoting it, because I remember wondering why I did not know this was on the film on the theaters.
Exactly. I had no idea either.
But it would make sense if they were kind of like just not promoting it, as to why I never watched it. I watched it on video released, and I was in awe. Number one, I might, maybe be a little partial because I really enjoy Eddie Murphy's films. I enjoy Beverly Hills Cops 3, and this is just Beverly Hills Cop 3 in the movie, which is one of the reasons why even I enjoy this even more, because it's the idea, but make it sci-fi. I remember the visuals on how the possibility of humanity on the moon and how everything fit into place. And I remember enjoying these visuals where they made it very natural. I know how humans would be like on the moon. I really, really enjoyed it. And like I mentioned initially at the beginning of the show, is although this has a lot of scientific facts, I believe you kind of changed my mind, Ray, in thinking why I never thought of the scientific facts within this film is because they made it very natural.
Yeah.
To where you feel, because you would be distracted. We have been distracted from other films where things are not, how they should be, and your brain just notice like, okay, hold on a second, there's something not right about this. I never once felt anything about that with this film, and I think that led me to enjoy this film as much and have as much fun as I did by watching it without being distracted on the typical things that we would normally see in sci-fi. I'm thinking back to that first time that I watched it, and I can't think of one thing that had me distracted from the film
Yes,
because
exactly.
it wasn't accurate somehow.
You didn't have one of those watching speed humps where you go, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Or hang on, we know, basic science would suggest that is ridiculous. Why would you do something like that?
Exactly. And to be honest with you, we're talking about 2003. So my knowledge at the time
2002
wasn't well, I watched it in 2003.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so did I.
My knowledge is not the knowledge of now.
Yeah.
And I want, yes, it's over 20 years, people, there's a lot that you can learn. I mean, it's a lot you can learn in a year. So having that in perspective, my knowledge when it comes to, scientific knowledge and all the stuff that I know now from all the readings that I have done and all the new discoveries that have happened since wasn't nowhere near my knowledge at the time. And even with that, I can't recall a moment that my brain said, hold up a second, that's not right. And that I got involved in the story, and I remember it never letting me go. And really allowed me to have fun. And I watched this movie so many times, and the one thing that I can remember, in the many rewatch since then, is I wanted to watch this film for the fun. And now that I think about it, and thank you, Ray, for mentioning that, I believe that it's not necessarily the fun, although this movie is fun. It's Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
This movie allowed me to be in the story and not break the immersion. And very few films can do this. So that's basically my.
No, I'm right there with you. I mean, just comparing this to one we did recently, Atlas. The moment they said, "Oh yeah, he's hiding in another galaxy," I'm like, ugh.
Yes.
And I couldn't. I was thrown completely out. Like, they didn't need to do that. All he needed to be was in a star system, like 30, 40, 50 light years away, and within 50 light years of Earth is like 200 star systems. You could hide easily amongst those. You don't have to go to a whole nother freaking galaxy because it's really hard. It's like, oh, why did you choose to do that? Who told you to do that? But anyway, yeah, I mean, there was nothing like that in this movie. This movie did not make me go, ugh, because of the science at all. Not once. Like, they didn't do anything stupid with oxygen. They didn't do anything stupid with airlocks. You could just sit back and watch this movie and it wouldn't piss you off as a scientist. So, I mean, it's got mega ticks for that just there. And I mean, look, I really enjoyed Atlas, but there was that moment when they said, "Oh yeah, he's hiding in another galaxy." It's like, dude, even Star Wars didn't try to do that. Come on.
Exactly. It's I mean, even maybe Star Trek, but I want to maybe recall maybe one or two episodes in Discovery. But considering that into the big space of what Star Trek is, I want to say not even Star Trek. There's
Star Trek went to the edge of the galaxy, which is fine.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with
yeah.
But just hopping galaxies is like, oh.
And I want to say this again. I mean, we're not saying that those films are bad. We really enjoy that film.
Yes.
If you listen to that episode, it's all we're basically talking about is that whenever moments like that happen, it kind of breaks the immersion of the story, at least for us.
Yep, there are some good movies out there that you just have to leave logic at the door and just take it for what it is, because things don't make sense. And if you try to make them make sense, it's just going to ruin the experience for you. So you have to go, okay, science brain, you go over there, and I'm going to watch this movie over here, and just yeah.
I'll let you know when I'm done.
Yeah, and I'll put you back in when I'm done, and then you can bitch about it all night. And that way you can enjoy the movie. But yeah, I mean, it's like when you have science fiction that isn't scientific-y, it bugs you. When you have a plot that just has huge plot holes in it and doesn't make sense, it really bugs you. And this had neither of those. Nothing was particularly stupid. Nothing was out the door, forget about it in the science side of things. So I could sit down and watch this movie and enjoy it. Now, it really bugs me that reviewers didn't review this movie. They just panned it. They didn't say, I dislike this movie for these reasons. They just said, is it bad? Yes. I don't give a shit about your opinion. I want a review. If you can't do the review, you're not a reviewer. Piss off. So basically, they just got on the bandwagon, didn't make an effort to talk about the movie at all, probably didn't even watch it. They just thought, oh, I can phone this one in, much like I've been told Eddie Murphy did, but I didn't actually watch it. He did not phone in this performance. And look, this movie had some really good actors in it. Eddie Murphy's a good actor as far as I'm concerned. He's a very good comic. He has great comic timing. And he made a real effort in this one to make it believable. And, there was a few funny things that you had to sort of accept for humor's sake. But in general, it hung together. And I didn't have a problem with that. So other notable actors in this movie, Randy Quaid, who played Bruno. He was excellent. Rosario Dawson as the female love interest. You should know that name, ladies and gentlemen, from Ahsoka. Exactly.
I keep looking for a lightsaber. Yeah. It would have been all.
That's probably a bit too preemptive. They could always go back and do a director's cut. And
yeah. They should do a remake part 2. There you go.
Now, Mr. Robert, I don't know if you've researched this yet, but Morgan, the guy who was chasing them around, who was leading the bad guys for a while, and got shot at the end of the movie, Joe, now I've got to get his surname right because it's Italian and I have a bit of trouble pronouncing this, is Pantoliano, I think it is, Pantoliano, Joe Pantoliano. You should know this actor.
Oh boy.
Gio would be able to tell you in a second.
Oh boy.
Who this is. Do you know who?
Oh.
Do you know what he?
No.
Do you know who he played in what movie?
No.
A movie from 1999. So basically, off the back of this really successful movie, he then played in Pluto Nash.
Shock me.
SciFi from Matrix.
Oh yes. I was thinking about a completely different guy. Yes. Oh my God. It's interesting about him because every time after every time I see him after the Matrix, I'm expecting that type of role, and he doesn't play that type of role all the time. So when I see them opposed to what he did, it always feels weird to me. But in this film, he was on the comedic side, if you think about it. I mean, he was a bad guy, but he was on the comedic side. And I think I kind of enjoy that side of him.
Well, he went from playing the bad guy within the good guys camp to playing a thug. So, I mean, as far as the character went, he held up his end. But he was the thug that fails at everything because the good guy's just too good at it, kind of deal. So you can't really fault him for failing at everything because he was supposed to. But yeah, I mean, he did a stand-up job as the thug that couldn't quite pull anything off because the MC was too good. Yeah.
I mean, he's there, right? So he can't get back to the city. So he's essentially dead, right? So we can go home now.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for
Deus Ex Machina.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, I get it.
The Latino smuggler.
He's such a great actor. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, I wonder because I seen it in enough. Like I seen him. He was in the last Beverly Hills Cops film. He was playing a gangster. So he, yeah.
Are you talking about the character Felix Lagana or Morgan?
Yeah. No, Felix.
Oh yeah, that's Luis Guzman.
Yeah. What is it that he said? Like Felix Laranga.
Yes.
And he emphasizes. That was so funny.
and he was a complete stan for Pluto Nash.
He was a simp.
Yeah, he was. He was totally a simp.
Nice.
I mean, it was highly amusing, which it was supposed to be. So that's fine. I couldn't get over John Cleese's The Car interface. That was so good. That's why I had to do that quote. And put my John Cleese on, you know. Oh dear. I mean, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, so getting back to the question you asked after 20 minutes. I saw this movie about the same time you did in 2003 on DVD release. I liked it so much I bought the DVD some days later. I never saw it advertised at the cinema. I think the advertising was very limited. And probably because the advertising was limited, the number of screens that it appeared on was limited. So that's why it didn't make any money. Basically, nobody wanted to show it. And that could have had a lot to do with the fact that Eddie Murphy didn't make an effort to advertise it. He kind of shot himself in the foot doing that because, I mean, if you're going to put your own money into a movie, you should bloody advertise it. Or maybe they just didn't have the money for advertising if they went over budget. So it's a possibility. But, yeah, I never saw it at the cinema. I never even knew it was on at the cinema. I might have gone to see it at the cinema in 2003 if I'd known it was on. So that's what advertising does for you. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I thought it was a cack, and you know, like I said, it was a movie you could sit down and watch, and there was no moments in the science, and it worked. There was no raging plot holes, and it was enjoyable. So I just feel like it was lambasted, absolutely lambasted, which is a shame because I think it's a good movie. But yeah, I was 32, 33 at the time, I guess. So, you know, watching it from a reasonably mature perspective, I can call my 30-something self mature. Not entirely sure that that's accurate, but I was married and holding down a job. That's reasonably mature, I suppose.
Yeah, we were adulting.
Yes, not necessarily well, but I was adulting. And yeah, I thought it was a good movie then. And rewatching it, I can't say that I've watched this over and over again like you have, but I did remember I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to do it on the show. And when I rewatched it, I had as much fun as I did the first time. So, you know, it's a fun movie. I think it's fun. And, you know, it had been so long since I watched it, I'd forgotten about Rex Creator being a clone of Pluto Nash. So I got the whole again, which is cool.
Yeah.
I got to enjoy that bit again. So yeah.
Yeah. I watched this film on my iPhone. I watched it on my iPad. I watched it on my car. I watched it on my computer. I watched it on my TV. Yes, this movie has been watched from any and every device in my house
Huh.
because I own a copy. So, and you know, I buy digital copies. I don't buy media anymore, like physical media. There's one topic that I wanted to bring up. One thing that I think I enjoyed about what this movie has to say is how it actually shows society. If you look at places, there are hubs for, you know, different countries and different societies. One example that could resonate with a lot of people when I mention it is New York. And where you find not only people from all walks of life, but you find, you know, people from all countries. When you have a mega city like that, there are hubs for basically the entire world. You see how society kind of looks, they kind of look for their own. Especially in a big city, they're lost, they don't have friends. So that's why you have, or you typically have places like, you know, Little Tokyo, Little China, places like that, because societies, they look for their kin.
I believe it's called birds of a feather flock together.
Exactly. And it's normal, and it's what you would do because especially in a city or any, I'm just talking about in general, any place of such a scale, you will feel alone unless you find people of your type or your kind. And I'm not saying that you should find this, but humanity does that on its own automatically. I find it really fascinating, and I don't know if you did, because this is what we see portrayed in this film in 2002 with the example of Little America. And the moon was big. When we pan into, like, especially at the beginning of the film, and you panned, you see like there's different domes. So I can only assume, because it was not said in this film, that there were other societies. Apparently, the moon was inhabited by humans. The moon is huge. So if you have a lot of people flocking to the moon, you're expecting that the same phenomena that happened in New York will happen on the moon. And I think that's just how society works. I find it refreshing. As one of the things that I found about this film is that we see this in this film, and it makes it real, where everybody that came from America kind of flocked. Well, not everybody, but mostly everybody flocked into what was it called? Little America?
Little America.
I think it was Little America.
And I think that was deliberately done to sort of mirror things like Little Tokyo and Little China and those sort of enclaves within a bigger city where birds of a feather flock together. People from particular countries get together because, you know, some of them don't speak the local lingo very well, and, you know, they feel more comfortable in an environment where the people that they're surrounded by have the same ideals, the same ideas, and the same social structure that they're used to.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure because the film didn't go into details on this, but we're talking about these people were local. Apparently, they were born there. They are locals. and they kind of flocked because you could, I guess you would consider yourself, you know, if you were born and your father was born, and you're basically a local, and they still kept the societies in that manner separated. I would have loved to explore more of the other domes, but obviously this was just all about the adventures of Pluto Nash, just like in the film says. But it's basically what we see in society when you move to a place and you have a family, you have kids. Those kids maybe married within the same society because it's huge enough, and they have kids, and then their kids have kids. But they still are within the same sub society on that place. Where, for example, in Little America, in the moon, you have so many people living there. There are generations from the initial people who actually moved into the moon, that they are locals. And I find it also really fascinating, and a conversation that Pluto Nash was having with Dina when they were in forgot the name of this motel. What is it?
Paradise Springs, I think it was.
Where she's saying like she hates the moon, and he says, I hate Earthlings, because they always think everything is better on the Earth. I was in the Earth once, and air smelled funny. I kept on sneezing all the time. There was bugs everywhere. The only good thing about the Earth is, and then Dina said, let me guess, you could see the moon at night. And he responds, bingo. Even that is a common conversation that you would see from someone that have migrated to somewhere else. And it makes it, I think it just helps the immersion on this film so much, because that's what you expect. I mean, you could do the whole film without having that interaction. I don't think it would hurt it, but I think it helped in the immersion that we are talking about someone that have migrated to somewhere else, and you could see the perspective from the local versus the person who just came in. What is your thought on that? And I know that was a long comment.
Long lead-in, yeah.
And where I talked about how society normally works in big places like that, and how the interactions between a local and someone that came in new are. But did you? I guess the question is, did you notice that, or is this something that maybe you noticed after your mini rewatch, or did you notice it at all?
They did a good job with the script in making everything feel lived in. Now, what I mean by that is that there's been development. Thinking about where we're going at the moment with planned moon colonies, they're all going to be corporate or government. So it'd be very regimented, everybody would have the same uniform and so forth and so on. It wouldn't be like free and easy and do it yourself. There wouldn't be any of that. Now, that might come later, but the first moon colonies are going to be very regimented, because they're going to be either governmental, like NASA, or European Space Agency, or something like that, or the Chinese Space Agency, or the Indian Space Agency, whichever one it happens to be. Or it's going to be corporate, like some big corporation who will spend the massive amount of money to create a moon colony. And most of the time, it's probably either going to be for construction, like there are things that will be easier to construct for ships to go further onto Mars or outer planets of the solar system that will be easier to build on the moon because of the lower gravity. Moving heavy objects around will be much easier on the moon because it's not being pulled down to the surface as hard. So that will be something that will, drive engineering and construction on the moon for building things to go further out into the solar system. Also, now I'm not 100% sure if this is correct. I'd have to do some more research, but there's a fuel source on the moon. I'm trying to remember what it was called. It's a particular isotope that there's a fair bit of on the lunar poles, I think, and that will probably be mined to use as an energy source, either just in general reactors for power and lighting, or maybe for engines at some stage. Because of course, when we go away from the Earth, we can't use the Earth for resources anymore. It's very expensive to drag stuff up from the surface of the Earth, as we've mentioned many times before. So finding it out there is going to be far more cost effective. The talk is using the moon as a jump off point to the rest of the solar system, which makes sense. And so they'll want to be able to find as much as they can there rather than shipping it from somewhere else. So if there's a fuel source on the moon, they will probably use it, and it will probably be mined, and that mining will require people to work unless they can fully automate it, which is always difficult, especially in a hazardous environment like the moon. But there will need to be at least a few people there to run maintenance and control the machines and troubleshoot and all that sort of thing. So there's at least going to be small colonies of people on the moon. It may not end up being, full cities. They didn't really talk about it in this movie, but where do they get their food from? Where do they get their oxygen from? Where do they get their water from? Because those are the things that they will run out of really quickly. So NASA is still working those details out, and it will, take some time to make any colony on the moon sustainable. We don't think about it on the Earth because we have a stupid amount of water. I mean, only a very small amount of it is potable, which means drinkable. But we do have a stupid amount of water, and it's not very hard to take some seawater and evaporate it and condense it, and then you've got pure, fresh, clean drinking water. So, I mean, we do have functionally unlimited supplies of water on the Earth for what we might need it for. With a little bit of ingenuity, but that's not the case on the moon. And oxygen, it's another thing we can't live without, and food is another thing we can't live without. And all of those things are consumable, and you've got to create more of them. So, I mean, Eddie was, or Pluto was bitching about the Earth, and I was always sneezing and so forth and so on, because, there's plates going down there, and, you get problems with allergies to pollen. But of course, where are they getting their food from on the moon? It was never coloured. Do they have massive hydroponics facilities? In which case, you could go in there and get the sneezes. But of course, with everything being separated, you wouldn't necessarily come into contact with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting to consider all these things. Now, what we did get to see in the movie made a whole lot of sense in that, human beings will try and recreate what they know and understand wherever they go. And of course, what we got on Little America was Vice. There was go-go dancers and there was all this sort of thing. And it kind of struck me that the vibe was sort of an updated version of the 50s. And another...
Well, I like how they play with the years, right? Like, for example, the movie took place in 2087, so it's the 80s, and Bruno was from 2063.
Yeah.
So that's another thing now that you mentioned. That's another thing that I found that really, really cool is how there's a human normalcy. I don't know how you want to put it, of just naming the last two digits of a year. This is something that we see in every decade. Um, like people from the 1800s, you could, read, in the 40s, I used to do this. Or in the 50s, it was better. And the 1950s, the same thing, happens. In the 40s, I was, this and that. And we're starting to see it on now in 2000s, in the teens, this happened. Now we're in the 20s. And this is something that happened in this film exactly the same way. And I find it really, really funny how they picked the right range for this film to make it look like what would be most likely today. Well, not today, but at the time the film came out, when they're saying, it's the 80s now, but he's kind of like when you talk about a car, this is a Mustang from 63, and it sounds really cool. And I think that also helped.
Yes.
In the immersion of this film.
With a lot of excuse me. With a lot of sci-fi, you get these huge gaps in societal change. They talk about the 80s or 90s or 2000s 200 years later, and there's nothing in between. Like they haven't thought up what society went through and how things changed and what the vibe was in the intervening years. There's just this huge gap. But this movie didn't do that. This movie felt like it had a continuity, which is one of the other things that really impressed me about it. Oh, you're a 65, aren't you? No, actually, I'm a 63. This is my top speed. I'm a 63. It kept bringing it back to a continuity of years and, stuff happening. There was a history to things. Everything wasn't just created for the movie and it was all brand new. There was history and continuity, which really made it feel lived in, I thought. And when you can make your world of your movie lived in, it makes a whole lot more sense. Like they were talking about the car that they were hijacking. Oh, this is a 2078 Plymouth. You can't buy these. It hovers off the ground this far and does this and does that. And it's like, the characters had understanding and appreciation of things that had been made in the past, which was our future. And that's what made it feel lived in. I think they really did a good job with this movie. There wasn't that gap. It wasn't like always referring back to the 1980s when it's, several hundred years later, like Star Trek tends to have a bad habit of doing. I would have liked to, in Star Trek, have seen them referencing multiple points in history that we haven't seen yet, more often than just always referencing the 1920s, the 1980s, the 19-something else's. It should have been more reference to things that were closer to their time because that's what more people knew. I know they were doing it so that the people who were watching it at the time that the show was released could reference it, but they also should understand that that's not how it would have been logically in the future. They should be referencing things closer to their time than ours. So that's where they kind of broke the immersion there. But this movie didn't do that. This movie didn't crap on about the 80s or the 90s or anything in the 1900s. It was all, this is a 2063, this is a 2087, this is they talked about their time, not our time. And it made much more logical sense.
Another thing that I kind of like can't help think, and this is like not back when I watched this film for the first time, but more towards like now, including today. And I think I watched this film this week alone 3 times.
Wow. You're all in.
Yes. This like we talked about, this film takes place in 2087. And it fascinates me because it's not like these people knew back at the time. I mean, they had great scientific advisors, but they don't have, fortune tellers or future makers.
The rise of SpaceX was not a thing.
Exactly. But something that's really brings it a little home, today, right? Versus back then when I watched this for the first time, is that NASA is planning Artemis 3 to have it's a planned landing on the moon. And that is in September 2026.
Yeah, they've blown their timeline because they were originally saying this year. So it didn't quite go to plan, but that sort of thing happens. I mean, I was totally amazed because I didn't realize that NASA was started in 1958 when we talked about Forbidden Planet, and then thinking, we won't get to the moon till the end of the 21st century. They got to the moon like 13 years after Forbidden Planet came out, which was like, what? So, like NASA wasn't even there. So they had no clue. They didn't have a magic ball, a crystal ball that they could stare into and see that NASA was going to be formed in 2 years, and they were going to pour the entire budget of the USA into it for a decade and get to the moon, because it was unprecedented. It was thought that it was going to take a lot longer. And again, with this movie and what's going on with Artemis and SpaceX at the moment, I mean, you can plan all you like, but you can't necessarily keep to a timeline if things don't go the way you're expecting. So, there's ups and downs with all these sorts of things. And space is hard, as we've mentioned many, many times before. Space is hard. Humans aren't meant to live in space. Humans are meant to live on dirt balls, specific dirt balls. This one.
Yeah.
And
very, very, very specific.
Very, very specific. I mean, I've waxed lyrical many times about different gravities, and I'll go into that because this movie covers it. But, we need a specific gravity. We need a specific pressure. We need a specific atmosphere mix. We need specific plant and animal species that we can actually eat, because, if they're based on silicon or something else, or their genetics isn't suitable, we won't be able to eat them. They'll kill us. Or worse.
That's why we can't eat plastic today.
But I mean, humanity as a species is probably doomed based on the way we treat the planet. Maybe we'll pull it back at the 11th hour and 59th minute. I don't know, but generally as a species, we're screwing everything up, and we really should stop. But I can't see it happening. I mean, getting 9 billion people to agree.
It's hard in a meeting of 15 people.
Exactly. I mean, there'll be a great readjustment at some point. It's already expected that the population is peaking, and when the shit hits the fan and the environment goes to crap, humanity will plummet in numbers, and it's going to be pretty horrific.
Maybe we need wild stallions.
I don't think they can fix the pollution problem or the atmosphere problem.
They did unite the planet,
Well, yeah, if we could do that, that would be a great first step.
Nice. Yeah, so it's one of the things about this film that I really enjoy. We're talking about this, but it all comes down to how everything was done and planned out in this film to help you immerse yourself in the story. And little things like that I feel that could have worked without, they were purposely included. And I believe it has helped bring you even more into the story. I mean, we're talking about all this stuff, right? And I still have to remember out there that this is, what was the rating? 3.9. I still have to remember this is a film that is getting bad reviews from everybody. And this is, again, I mean, tomato meter. Let me just bring that back into perspective. 5%. And when we're having conversations like this, it makes it hard for me to believe why.
I just think it was bandwagoning. I just think that it was bandwagoning, lack of advertising, Eddie Murphy not being involved in the advertising. A lot of people go see a movie because they see an interview with the main actors about the movie, and they're talking about it, how much fun they had making it and how cool it was. And they go and see it. I mean, that happens with a lot of movies, especially ones with actors of the caliber of Eddie Murphy and Rosario Dawson, and those sort of level of folks. Oftentimes people will go and see it for them rather than the story. But I mean, I kind of feel like there wasn't any big holes in the special effects. There wasn't any big plot holes. It was well researched, well written. It had a good climax to it. Really, I don't think it deserved what it got. I really don't.
I really enjoyed the reveal, the big reveal. Granted, I'm so pleased when you mentioned you got to enjoy it a second time.
I did.
I don't think I'll ever get to enjoy it a second time because of the amount of times that I watched this film.
This film's indelled on your brain cells. You're never going to forget it.
Yeah, I wish I can, because it was a great reveal. Who and you could see how Pluto's, he had it down, right? He know this was it is this person. You think I'm stupid, and he looked stupid when he when he came out and showed himself.
I mean, you could have a go at, like, they said that Eddie Murphy phoned it in, but the look on his face when they spun his chair around, he goes, Pluto, I'm not Pluto. I'm Rex Crater. This is Pluto Nash. And he spins the chair around. And the look on the guy's face, like, I know that it's kind of hard for people with darker skin to look ashen, to get that whole when pale thing that white people can do easy. But he looked ashen. He looked stunned. He was like, he was a wreck there for a good minute and a half, 2 minutes. And that's what would happen when you discovered that the guy you've been up against, who blew up your club and had you chased across the moon, was a clone of you. You are the good guy and you are the bad guy. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. And I thought that was a really good twist.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It was such a great reveal. Were you going to say something about the atmosphere, or are you saving it for the science?
I'm going to save some stuff for the science this week. I'm not going to, shoot my shot on everything before I get there, and then I'm not going to talk about. I wanted to talk quickly about Easter eggs. The one big Easter egg that I spotted was a visual on a billboard, which was shown twice, as I remember, when they were panning through Little America, of a shot of a movie that we have covered. And it is, in fact, A Trip to the Moon.
It was so cool.
Yes. So I said that they weren't referencing the 80s or the 70s or the 80s and the 90s, but they put an Easter egg in there that any real, deep sci-fi lover would get. And I did, because we've covered it. But it's the French silent movie, A Trip to the Moon. which was now what year was it?
Oh,
Can't see it here. It's not listed. 1902. There it is.
so to put it in the perspective of the film, this was in 02.
The other 02. An earlier 02. Yeah.
It was so. I mean, I remember it was so iconic to see that, and you have the most iconic visual of that film, which is the moon as a face, and how the rocket, looking like a bullet, just park itself in one of the eyes, and that's what we see in the billboard on this film.
1 second, I'll display it for those watching on YouTube.
Very, very iconic. There you go.
So that was actually
So-
on a billboard in one of the pan-throughs of Little America, in between scenes. Twice. It was in there twice. Just in case you missed it the first time.
Nice. Now, can we talk about the body alteration?
Can of worms.
Can we talk about the body alteration?
Mm. If we're going to talk about the body alteration, we're going to have to talk about the misogyny. You know that, don't you?
Oh, you know, we were talking about this, me and Gio, and also we were talking about this in pre-show. It is interesting how this is a film they came out in 2002, and you still have beats and pieces of that within this film. I would have to agree, and I don't know if you would agree with me, that it wasn't as bad as, say, the Forbidden Planet that we covered.
Oh, it's hard to go beyond the 50s for misogyny, man.
But then again, it was the 50s, right?
Mm.
So I find that interesting that this is closer to our time. Granted, it was, what, 20?
22.
22 years in the past. And you could still see, not as with the level, but you can still see it. And I find that interesting. What is your thought on that?
I have to say that most of the media that I consume that's been made recently is very sanitized. It's sanitized for violence. It's sanitized definitely for sex. Sex is out in 2024, unless you go to the places that are serving only sex. You don't tend to see it very much. I don't remember the last time I saw a sex scene in a movie that wasn't a sex movie. So it's kind of like all those contentious issues are being cut out of media to try and sanitize everything and stop people from getting upset, because people get upset about whatever their personal bugbear is really easily these days. There's no acceptance of other people's opinions, and most of the media companies just want to avoid all that. So everything's sanitized. Not so much in this movie. This movie had gun violence and misogyny and organized crime and, all that sort of stuff. And it all made sense for where it was and what it was doing. And of course, we're only talking about media here. Real life is real life. It's a completely different animal to what media is producing these days. But I'd have to say that this media reflected real life in inverted commas, because it's the future on the moon, but it reflected humanity a lot more than what media does these days. for the reasons that I've already outlined. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There will be people who would be upset watching this movie about some of the things, some of the way women were treated. And that's their personal opinions and they're allowed them. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that this is more reflective of real life than the media you get these days. You can't watch media, from the US especially, but, worldwide media these days is all sanitized. Unless it's a specific genre like murder and stuff like that, you won't get violence. You won't get sex scenes unless it's a sexy movie. You won't get a lot of things unless it's specified that in the title or the tags, and you go in expecting that. Things have got to be spelt out these days so that people can't complain, oh, I watched this and I didn't know it was going to be like that. Because people love to complain these days about media. So media's gotten really specific so that people who don't like that thing won't watch it because the tag's there. And they know that, if they watch this, they will get something and they may not like it, so don't watch it. And that's the media producers out. That they can say, well, look, it was in the tag, it was in the description. If you chose not to watch those two things, it's on you.
I also think this was a product of its time.
Oh, everything is. Basically.
One example that I can bring up is, like, for example, The Last Airbender. There's some things.
Are you talking about the cartoon? Are you talking about the really shitty movie by Ubol? Or are you talking about the new series on Netflix? Because you got to specify, dude.
Well, if you watch the original, the OG animation, I really, really enjoy it. There's some things there also that they are a product of its time. So when Netflix remade it, those things were absent from the Netflix version.
You're right. I did notice that. Yeah, they sanitized it.
And I'm not saying that it's bad, right? I really, really enjoy the Netflix version. Can't wait for the next one. But it's just the nature of the beast, right? Society changes, and it needs to change. And it needs to change, hopefully, for the better. But everything that you create, it's kind of like a photograph, right? You take a picture, and that is a moment in time, frozen. Movies are the same way. TV shows are the same way. Any media that you produce is the same way. You're capturing a moment in that society's history that will never be the same. Hopefully, for the better, right? But definitely will not be the same. So that is my argument with that. I might not agree with some of the things that, have been created in the past, right? One example is like Forbidden Planet and some other things. But I am not going to let, maybe hate that product because of that one thing. Yeah. The same thing I say about the Last Airbender, the anime version. There might be some things that I'm, now that I've seen it with grown-up eyes, that I might disagree with, but I still would rewatch it because I know it's a moment in time frozen, and it will never change. And if you change it, it will not be the same thing.
Talk to George Lucas and Star Wars about that. How many times did he change that?
And that's why we had so much, stuff in the media. I remember when every time, when he started making the first change and the second change and the third change, and how everything, like, fans were going crazy because it was changing. And I'm sure that we lost something. We always lose something in translation. Unless you were able to get the physical media, those moments are lost in time. But that kind of proves my point to the other side of the coin, where you can, you might as well just reboot it. Kind of like what Netflix has done with. I mean, they try to do the same thing for Cowboy Bebop, which is another thing. I'm actually a little upset about that because I really enjoy what Netflix did, but maybe I'm alone with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point that I'm trying to make is things that we watch are a product of their time. This is how society was at that moment. You might not agree. I can tell you I don't agree with some of the things, but that's not going to, especially in this movie, for example, where I watched this week 3 times, I'm not going to let that affect, because I can't do anything about it. Like if it's something new, right, done in 2024, I might, right, because this is something that they should know better, because we are supposed to be reflecting our times. But these are stuff in the past. This is how society, and as a matter of fact, from the history standpoint, I believe it's necessary. There's a phrase that I'm sure everyone here have heard, where if we learn from history, you need to learn from history so you don't repeat the mistakes.
Yes, either you learn from history or you're doomed to repeat it.
Exactly. So I think those pieces of media should remain unchanged because this is how we can time travel and see how society was and learn from that and become a better person or a better society. But then again, that's just my thought on the thing. And I would actively go look for them and wonder how society was.
Yeah.
And amaze myself on how much we have grown from that.
Yeah, I'd pay that. Yeah, sure. I mean, all of these things, be it misogyny or what have you, is a continuum, and the point where society is on that continuum as the bulk of society, because there will always be people who are outliers who don't fit into that particular opinion at that point in time. There was always people who would be either hypersensitive or insensitive to whatever issue it happens to be. But society will be on that continuum somewhere. I mean, if you go back far enough, women were treated like almost slaves. They were kept in the kitchen, and they were there to make babies and do the housework, and that was their role, and that's all they did. And I don't agree with that, but that's how it was at one point. That's one end of the continuum. My personal opinion is that it doesn't matter what's between your legs; it matters what's in your head. And I don't care what sex or how you identify or whatever it happens to be. It's the sort of person you are that matters.
Yes.
So that's my personal opinion. Other people's opinions will differ. And so I'm probably close to the other end, but I'm not hypersensitive about it. I'm not woke about it. So, I can deal with people who are on the misogynistic end, but I won't want to spend a lot of time with them, and I won't take up their opinion. But and people who are way off the other far and being super sensitive about everything annoy the crap out of me too. So I'm probably more I'm not in the middle. I'm more towards the everybody has a right to do whatever they want, and not be limited by what's between their legs. So I'm closer to one end than the other, but I'm not hardcore right up one end or the other. So that's my opinion, and some people will agree with it and some people won't. That's society. Society isn't homogenous. It's not all of one mind. So we will always have to deal with those who are hypersensitive and those who are insensitive to whatever topic happens to be on the table at the time. And media reflects that.
Yes. I always thought that, life is short, right?
Tell me about
And
it. It's
you
my
have-
birthday in a week and I'm turning 55. Yes, life is short.
Well, life is short, and you have to make the most to be surrounded by the things you want,
Yes.
so you don't regret it later in life.
Yes.
So
Big sigh.
if you're getting together with someone that doesn't jive, it's okay to let it go and find another person. It's not going to kill them. They're going to find other like-minded individuals. So yeah, I that's one thing that I always thought about. Life is short, and we should make it the best for ourselves, so we don't regret it later in life when we're on our deathbed and wish that we have or could have done something differently. But then again, that's just my thought. And I mean, if you are that kind of person, it's okay. You'll find other people that are like-minded like you, and you can jive with them. I don't know if you ever thought it in that perspective, but
certainly.
that's my for.
and a person, or more specifically a woman who is very much on the feminist side and women's rights, oftentimes they'll believe that every single other woman thinks the same way, and it's not the case. There are some women who want to be subservient to men. There's some women who would prefer things to go back to the way they were, and for whatever reason don't like having freedoms and being able to do whatever they want because they can't deal with it. They want somebody to tell them what to do. And that's because not everybody is made the same way. You can give every single woman on the planet as much freedom as they desire, and some of them will freak out because they can't handle it, because we're not all the same. And I'm just using women as an example, but there are men who want to be subservient to women, who want to be controlled. And it doesn't matter what sex you are. There's people who are egalitarians. There are people who are subs, and some who are doms. It's the way people are made. They're all made differently. And with 9 billion of us just about kicking around on this planet, there's going to be differences. It can't all be the same. Sorry. So whatever position on the continuum for whatever subject we're talking about society is at this point will jive with the majority, but there will always be minorities that are thinking different and are on different parts of that spectrum. You're not going to get everyone on the same page, ever.
Yeah.
So don't try. It's not going to work that way.
That's why in business you say you can't please everyone.
Yes. You can please some of the people all of the time, or all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time.
Exactly.
Truisms. Much like this movie didn't please all of the people. In fact, it only pleased some of the people.
Yeah. And I guess, Eddie, if you're listening, we found those 3 people that like this film. So they're accounted for.
It's me, Robert, and his wife. We're all accounted for. We're the fan club. We'll wave the flag. You're good, mate.
Oh, I was wondering, going back to the question, and the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because I remember when I watched this film for the first time, it was kind of fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Where they went to the body alteration, and they're kind of like picking through. They went into this place, they scanned them, and it's kind of like what resembles what a catalog would look like, where you take a pick of what you want and you try it out. Well, not necessarily trying it out. You're looking into a mirror on how that would look like. And it was really impressive for me for its technology. And I was wondering if the same thing happened to you when you watched this for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it was jokified, but it did have a very sort of scientific-y bent to it. I'm using that word way too much. I'm going to lose my scientist card.
You do have a shirt. You too can wear scientific.
Oh dear. I'll get thrown out of my job if I wear that shirt to work.
Especially if you spelled it the way that it's on the shirt.
Yeah.
That was on purpose, by the way, just in case.
You know, I'm a scientist and an editor, and you hurt both of me with that shirt. I took physical damage.
It is done on purpose.
Yes,
so if you ever
I
go
know.
to our shop and you see the spelling, know this. It was not the way that we thought. It was done on purpose. That's not how we think it should be
I feel
spelled.
personally offended and pointed out by this shirt. But other people have different reactions for various reasons. It is funny. But getting back to the point, I felt like they'd sort of brought up a very interesting way of presenting it. It reminded me of sort of a lowbrow version of character customization in an MMO.
Yes.
Where you know you can move the eyes up and down a little bit and make them more Asian or more European, or adjust the shape of the nose and all those little details to make your preferred face for your character for the MMO. It really felt to me like something that people would go for, but then again they jokified it. They made her with massive knockers and a big ass and everything because he just kept going on like that because it's Eddie Murphy and he's making it funny. So it's very interesting. I was reading through the wiki here, and the director, like that, there was all this sort of angst going on in the production. Once Eddie Murphy had come on board, they decided that they were going to jokify the script rather than have it as a straight man script, which they were planning on because they had Harrison Ford and somebody else sort of in line for the Pluto Nash role before Eddie Murphy took it on.
Wow, that would have been a complete different film.
It would have, yes. It would have been more like Minority Report, something like that. Way more serious sort of criminal underground in space on the moon, or sort of like sort of fugitive kind of space fugitive movie. So yeah, it would have landed completely differently. And then they decided to jokify it because Eddie Murphy was coming on board, and Eddie Murphy wasn't happy with that. He was more like, I will bring the humor. Don't bother writing it in. I'll make it happen. And they were like, no, we need to make the script funnier. And they were modifying the script on the day of shooting.
Wow.
So it was very much, and I think when you're fiddling with it on the day, it can go one or two ways. They were fiddling with the script for Lord of the Rings on the day, but they were doing it because they were trying to make it perfect for the Lord of the Rings fans. That is commendable. It makes it hard for the actors because they have to relearn the script on the day.
Yes.
They have to try and remember the changes, and it takes a really good script memorizing mind to overwrite something you've been practicing and get it right. So they probably had to do a lot of takes and remind people, oh no, that's changed to this, and then redoing it. But they were doing it here because the director wasn't happy with the script, and he actually fired the writers and got a new one during filming. So, or just before filming started. So that makes it hard on the actors, and that could cause a lot of anxiety and angst which could make the filming uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the reasons. Well, it's probably one of the reasons that it wasn't advertised very well, and that the actors weren't up for, going to interviews and doing all that stuff, because it would have come out that, it was hell on set. So, I mean, it's comedy, it's supposed to be fun, but they just kept fiddling. And, I mean, I didn't dislike the result. I thought it was quite funny in places, and I enjoyed it. And the script didn't have any glaring holes in it, but the experience of creating this piece of work must have been pretty rough. So,
wow, yeah, it's. I keep on reading how behind the scenes, it was a negative experience.
Yeah. But I still think that they produced a reasonable movie considering what they went through.
I think I would have enjoyed the other version of this film, but I would have been sad there's one less comedy. I think we need a lot more comedy. And I don't know that we see, sci-fi comedy often. Like for example, you have no idea how excited I was when they announced that they're going to start making it's granted we have lower decks, right? But it's an animation, right? They're going to make a live action Star Trek comedy.
Ooh.
They announced it. They haven't told you the name. They haven't told you anything, just in the pure, how they do things. That's pretty much how it is. That you just see it last minute, and I think that helps them, get the most audience when everything is shrouded in mystery and it comes out of the last minute. But I got really excited because I think we need more comedy. I think sci-fi needs more comedy. But again, that's just my thought.
Well, you put space in front of the word comedy and have space comedy, it's always better. Because space always makes everything better. But I get what you mean. There's not a lot of comedy in the sci-fi wading pool, you might say. Having said that, the movie that Tubi was going to play automatically for me after this movie finished, like 10 seconds into the credits, I actually wanted to watch the credits because I'm doing it for the show. But they wanted to play Space Truckers for me.
No,
which is sci-fi comedy. So, and we have covered it. Go back to our back catalogue and check out Space Truckers. It is special.
Oh, yeah. We really enjoy that one. So yeah.
I put you onto that. Is that Space Truckers? I don't think I'll like that. Robert comes back to me. This is so fucking funny.
We have to cover Spaceballs.
Oh, we haven't done Spaceballs. Ludicrous speed.
Exactly.
We need to go at ludicrous speed and do Spaceballs.
Oh yes. But there are sci-fi comedies out there. It's just that we need more. And I would have to say, like for example, Lower Decks, right? Lower Decks was funny, but it was in the style of Star Trek, right? You still have the
technobabble.
The technobabble. You still have that, and that is kind of like a subgenre almost, because I rarely see that. You either go full comedy and make things, because that's what comedy
Ludicrous.
is. You want to exaggerate everything. Ludicrous. You want to exaggerate anything to help with the comedy. But I think a good science sci-fi comedy, I'm hungry for. I'm really hungry.
Well, maybe you'll need to write one and pitch it to I don't know, who would actually.
Well, I can't.
MGM.
I can't wait for the live action of Star Trek. the Star Trek comedy, because I have a feeling that's what I've been waiting for. If it is what I think it is, right? Knock on wood. I can only go by my past experience. For example, one of the directors of this is Tawny Newsome, which is the voice of Mariner on Lower Decks.
Mhm.
So that gives me hope, because Lower Decks is an example of what I would like to see in live action. And if she's on board, there's a bigger chance that that's what we are going to get. So I have a hunger. I mean, can Star Wars do it?
Mm.
Maybe, but the thing is, I feel like they're not listening to their fans as well as the people empowered to create Star Trek. But yeah, regardless of who does it, I am so on board. I want to see more, not necessarily funny sci-fi, but funny science sci-fi. That's what I like to see.
Well, one that immediately jumps to mind that we have covered is, and my brain just went blank. Never give up, never surrender.
Yes.
What's it called?
That is. Oh wow.
you've gone blank too.
I don't know, spaces in my head right now. Oh boy, we were talking about this, me and my wife, recently. We might end up watching it again. There's so many times. We have seen that film so many times. It's such a classic, and we call it, one of the best Star Trek films ever made, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Galaxy
Thank
Quest.
you. God, my brain's just not helping. I mean, there's Galaxy Quest. There's Orville, which started out quite funny and got rather serious later on.
It got serious.
I mean, we've covered both of them.
I still like it. Don't get me wrong. I wish they would stayed on the comedic side, although it still had comedy on it. But that still is not going to be an impediment for me to keep on watching. Which, by the way, the next season they announced they're going to start producing it in January.
Season 4.
So, yes.
Commander Quincy Taggart of in Galaxy Quest said, "Never give up, never surrender."
So yeah, I want more.
One of the better Star Trek movies.
Is it on par with the Wrath of Khan? Is it?
Yes, but for different reasons.
Okay. I'll take
the Wrath of Khan was serious, and this is tongue-in-cheek love letter. So they're different beasts, but they're both awesome. And one of my greatest disappointments is the fact that you got to Wrath of Khan before I joined the show, because it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, we had.
I understand why you got to it early on, because it's awesome, but I wish I'd been there. Maybe we'll have to do a retrospective sometime.
Yeah, it would be cool if we can get. We could redo other things that we have done, and the reason why I say that is because we say this in so many times in this show. Perspectives change with years. So, I mean, how many times have we talked about a film that, we have in retrospect realized, I thought this movie sucked, but it's actually good.
I'd really love that to happen for me with 2049, but I don't think it's going to. Maybe when I'm 80 or something, I'll look at it and go, yeah, well, it doesn't totally suck.
Maybe in 2049 will make sense to you.
Maybe.
Maybe. We'll find out. Okay. So
One thing that I was sort of alluding to, and we wandered way off the topic, was the whole organic development of the colony. So we were talking about it being governmental or corporate to begin with, but then individuals and sort of support businesses would start flowing in, and then the government may make a dome for them, and then that area becomes like the vice capital where you go to get drunk, laid, take drugs, whatever. And it's very interesting that the laws, they were speaking about the laws being different on Earth and the Moon, which makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, the Moon is almost extraterritorial in that nobody can really claim the whole thing as this is under the purview of the US government or the European Union or Australia. God knows that won't happen, but we're too lazy to take over the Moon. But we're too busy on our beaches. They're too nice. We don't get them up there. But
send the
sorry?
Send the emus.
Send the emus. My son was actually watching a YouTube video about the Great Emu War of 1924. But we lost. The emus won. Check it out. Go check it out on YouTube. Just look up the Great Emu War, where the Australian Army took on the emus and lost. It is funny.
That could be a really great sci-fi film.
That's really the only war we have lost that Australia's been involved in. So that's our one strike. But anyway, it's kind of interesting that you can almost feel how this colony developed, and the fact that you've got this dome, Little America, that's got a whole bunch of things that you almost subconsciously could see in America: strip malls, fast food, bars, cabaret joints, you name it, big parking garages with lots of cars in them. That sort of individuality that the US is well known for, where everybody's got a car because you've got to be individuals, damn it, and they're all armed because America. so it feels American. They did a great job. Well, I'm an Australian, South Floridian, but having never been to America, and all my American knowledge is from American friends, TV, and documentaries. So it's all filtered. It's not me having been there. It felt American to me. I don't know. Did it feel American to you, Mr. American?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm justified in my statement. Excellent. But my N numbers are a bit small. I'll have to ask a few more people. But I mean, it felt right to me. I didn't feel like it couldn't be. Like it had a bit of a feeling of New York, a bit of a feeling of Las Vegas, and it kind of worked. So I didn't have a problem with it. And the whole sort of. They thought about it. They really thought about it. There's sweeping shots going over a place like an oxygen bar. Now, on Earth, that would be ridiculous because you've got more oxygen, you know what to do with. Yay, forest fires. But on the Moon, it would be a very limited resource. So, go to an oxygen bar and get some nice fresh oxygen because, in domed cities, the oxygen would be recycled. The CO2 would be scrubbed out of it, and it would be full of smells that you just couldn't get rid of because you don't have that huge sink of atmosphere that you have on Earth. So it makes sense to have a bar that serves fresh oxygen, so you can sort of like revitalize your lungs a bit from all the crap you've been breathing in this dome that may not be maintained as well as it might otherwise. So I mean, it all felt functional. There was nothing there that really jumped out at me as that's ridiculous. Why would it be like that? So I think they really thought hard about this and they really put it together. Even the little fine details made sense. I mean, my immediate thought when I saw the freeway on the moon, I thought, why would you have a freeway? But then I thought to myself, individuality. People from America want to have their own car, they want to have their own vehicle, and a freeway will help them get between dome cities quicker, and then they don't have to book a flight and not be able to take their stuff with them. And it kind of made sense. And it's sort of like copy-paste freedom in America. And we have a fair bit of that here in Australia. But then you look at a place like Japan, and not that many people own cars because they have good public transport and they're bunched together. Tokyo's the biggest urban area in the world. So there's a lot of people living together. So then not that many people driving cars because they live in condos and high rises and blocks of flats and stuff like that. They don't have individual buildings like quarter acre blocks and 2-car garages and all that sort of stuff. They don't have that. They can't afford it. It's very expensive there. So it makes sense for Americans. It makes sense for Australians, if a little bit less free with the firearms. And it makes sense that a place called Little America on the Moon would have a freeway and cars that could drive on the moon. It just works. So you get what I'm saying? You're picking up what I'm putting down, that there wasn't a problem with the way they set this story up with all the little fine details. I couldn't find a problem. It all made sense. It all flowed. It had a continuity. It had a timeline, and it was well done.
You know, that's one of the things that makes me sad is the fact that this movie flopped, because I think I want to know more of this world.
Yeah, I would have liked a sequel.
I wanted to see, you know, what little China looks like, what little Japan would looks like, you know, not just, you know, this dome, you know, what about, I mean, in this universe, this could be made into a universe. You could have, you know, a show that is very gritty, that talks about maybe police enforcement in any of the cities in there. You can have a romantic comedy about, you know, what is this couple and coming together and finding themselves and eventually marrying. And the reason why I'm mentioning all that is because the perspective of all these different kind of genres in this universe, it's really cool because it's outside the Earth.
Yep.
So it's a shame, really, that this flopped, because that pretty much doomed for, you know, a part 2 of this.
I mean, Eddie Murphy was known for sequels because he did 3 Beverly Hills Cops. So if he knocked this out of the park in the first place, it could have gone on for sequels and stuff like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Not sure if you have anything more to add. I was going to move on to our last question.
Well, I got some stuff from science fiction, but yeah, we can move on to the last question. That's fine.
Okay, so the last question is, and if you are new to this show, basically we ask, what is your last impression of the film? This usually includes the multiple rewatches that you have done, if any, of the thing we're talking about. For this particular episode, it kind of works because although I've seen it quite a few, I mean, Ray, you've seen it multiple times.
I've probably seen it 5 times. Okay. But it was probably 4 times back in the early 2000s and then yesterday. So there was a bit of a gap.
Yeah, I bought this and I kind of rewatch it whenever I feel I want more sci-fi comedy, and it's just so much fun to watch and sit down and enjoy this film. So, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
You kind of sound like you already started, so you might as well finish.
Okay, well, let's go. Let's go with that then. Yeah, this film, it's so much fun. Like I mentioned before, it's well put together. It did not break the immersion. It actually, which many of the things that they actually show in this film helped to immerse me even more into the story. One of the things that I don't understand, and I want you guys listening to help me with, is I want to hear your perspectives on this film. If you didn't like it, if you liked it, I want to hear your perspective. I really enjoy this film, and I find it very, very interesting that I have mentioned this film to other people, and the common response for this film is the movie sucked. It definitely is not my perspective. I wonder if it is just because that's the way that I am, and that just happens to fit. The style of this movie happens to fit my style. I kind of tested this theory with my wife, but that might be a little partial. She truly enjoyed this film. My parents enjoy this film. They're from a complete different generation. So I'm kind of wondering if, what is it? Do you guys have the answer for this? This film, it's amazing. Its visuals, its perspective. I really enjoy the perspective. Like Ray mentioned earlier, the science doesn't make me pause. And the more I think throughout all my rewatch of this film, which have been many, just like I said, I watched it just this week. I watched it 3 times. Is how much fun it was. Yes, it had a lot of scientific topics that helped the movie in not breaking the immersion, because I have had that in the past multiple times. But to me personally, I enjoy it because of that, I am allowed to enjoy the fun without a break in the immersion. I think the science is there. What's the word that I'm looking for? It's just on the surface, and you could find it, and you can talk about it, and you can discuss it, but it's mainly there to help you not break the immersion in the story and enjoy the movie for what I think it is, just plain fun. It's a lot of fun, and I think I will take what Ray mentioned to me before, that this is Beverly Hills Cop on the moon, and I am all over for it. So if you are a Eddie Murphy fan, if you are a sci-fi lover, I would find it very hard to believe that you're not going to enjoy this film. But I do want to hear from you. I do want to hear. I just don't want to hear if you don't like it. I want to hear it too. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your perspectives. So I invite you to post and use the hashtag This Is Sci-Fi, and let's discuss it, or join our Discord and let's talk about it, because I am very curious, because this is puzzling to me.
And don't be a weenie and just say it's bad because it's bad. You've got to have your reasons. If you can't back up your statements, just don't bother.
I just mainly want to hear your perspectives. I mean, just
an opinion is not a perspective, though.
No, I know, but I want to hear perspectives.
Me too.
I really enjoy different perspectives, so I want to hear your perspective, and as to why you like it, why you hate it.
I mean, anybody who's got to this point in our podcast, we've been going for like 2 hours 44 minutes now, mustn't hate this movie. because why would they listen for 2 hours and 44 minutes about a movie they hate? At least we've filtered out the haters, right? So we should at least get some perspectives from that question. That's all I can logic up at this point.
Yeah, so I think I can close my statement by saying if you are a sci-fi lover, if you are an Eddie Murphy fan, this movie is for you. I find it very hard to believe you're going to hate this film. And it's plain fun, and it's the type of fun that we need more in sci-fi. Yeah. We have gritty, we have all kinds of serious and violent and horror and thriller. We have all that stuff. We need more comedy, and this actually fills that gap. And I believe that's my last thought.
Cool. Man, you just about sucked up every point I was going to make. I knew you would.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I should have gone last because of how.
But then I probably would have said about 95% of them, and you would have gone everything he said plus this. I echo every single thing you said, man. I'm not your clone, but I look at this the same way. I'm probably not looking at it as strongly from the comedy side of things. I enjoy the comedy, but I'm as being a writer, not of comedy, but of drama, with a little bit of comedy thrown in. I find this movie really works for me. They put a lot of effort in on a lot of different levels in this movie, and it shows. And it means that it's like a comfortable sci-fi lover's bed that you can lie in and feel like you're on the moon.
Yes.
And it is like Robert said, and like I said earlier, it's Beverly Hills Cop on the moon, and it's comfortable. It's comfortable sci-fi. There's nothing that jumps out at you that says this is stupid. All the situations flow on from one another and make sense. It's immediately relatable in that it has all the elements of it's not a cop movie because he's an ex-crim,
yes.
But he is trying to do the right thing, and he's trying to work out what's going on. So it's sort of like it's the adventures of Pluto and Nash. It's an adventure, and I can't understand why the reviewer said, "Where's the adventure?" Because it was lots of it. It was all over the freaking place. There was gunfights. There was going to hideouts. There was more gunfights. There was fleeing across big rills in the moon's surface. There was big casinos and dodging the security and getting up to see the bad guy and the big reveal at the end. There's tons of adventure. I mean, what was that guy smoking? And hopefully it killed him by now because he was a dick. But I find this a good movie. And I think that any reasonable person who is you've got to be into sci-fi. You've got to be into a little bit of science with your sci-fi. You've got to be into, comedy and the way Eddie Murphy plays comedy. And I liked it. There was multiple sections that were quotable and amusing. It was all put together, as I said, on different levels. It felt lived in. It felt more lived in than iRobot, and I thought iRobot did a reasonably good job of it. But the whole script was littered with a continuity of time, which you don't get in a lot of sci-fi. And they did it well. I mean, the scriptwriters should get an award for this script for how grounded it felt. It felt organic and grounded, which a lot of sci-fi does not. So it gets big ticks from me in the "you made a believable world" department. I think that this movie, if you really look at it and don't listen to the dickheads who were just review bombing it, and you give it a really good look, and we've given you a huge outline about what we think's good about it. Have a look at it, watch the show, and make your own decisions. If you don't like grounded sci-fi, if you don't like continuity, if you don't like good comedy, you probably wouldn't like a movie like Galaxy Quest, because this is up there with Galaxy Quest as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I said at the start of the show, I had wanted to do this one and I kept forgetting to put it on the list. And when Robert brought it up, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, really? Excellent. Oh, I can do it. Because he was so worried that it sucks. No, it does not suck. This is a good movie. From my point of view, it's a good movie. If you can't find anything to like about it, I'm not sure you're a sci-fi fan. You're definitely not an Eddie Murphy fan. And you're not a comedy fan. So you're boring. So I highly recommend this movie. If you haven't gone out and watched it like I recommended earlier, you've probably been spoiled. I'm sorry, but that's what we do. So go and watch the movie, then listen to the pod. It's all good. That's the order. It's always been the order. Don't mess it up.
Well, I would have to say, I know of fans of our show that would actually listen to that episode and then watch the thing.
Wow. I mean, Chio's like that. He doesn't care about being spoiled. I love telling him about stuff I'm excited about because I don't have to hold back. And he'll still go and watch it because he wants to see how it got there.
In some of the comments, and I can tell you, I mean, I can't really figure out who the person was, but one of them actually told me that there was one that he was on the fence on, and he listened to our episode just to get our perspectives, and that was enough for this person to go watch the thing.
And then what did he think of the thing after that?
Well, on that one particular, I guess our perspective was helpful enough for him to be able to. And again, this person has not seen the thing that we covered, right? It was just one of those things where, like, I don't think that movie's for me. I'm not going to watch it, which it has happened to me too. I mean, there has been maybe I watched trailer. I'm like, maybe that's not for me. That's kind of like the scenario would this happen. This person listened to that episode and that was enough for them to watch the film and they enjoyed it. So I can tell you there are fans out there who actually listen to our episode, get spoiled, and then watch the thing because maybe that's what they needed. They needed a different perspective. Right. And I really enjoy perspectives for that reason.
I'm always wanting to form my own opinions and then go and see what the other people thought about it. So, I mean, there's no correct order, but yeah, getting spoiled just bugs me because you lose that surprise. And I mean, in this movie, I got the surprise again because I hadn't watched it for so long because I'd forgotten about the big reveal. So I was like, oh, cool. I got it again. So,
yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, I highly recommend this movie. I'm one of the 3 people on the planet that does. So I feel special.
We got a shout out from Eddie Murphy. So, that's all good.
Yeah, sure is.
Okay, so are we ready for our last segment?
Maybe. Kick it in the guts. We'll do our best. And that would be the wrong button.
Yeah.
The science in sci-fi.
Phew, I thought we had 3 more hours to go. I'm getting a bit tired.
Nice.
So, I actually left a couple of things out of our discussion deliberately, and not having Chaos here, he didn't chaotically add it back in. It's a little bit easier without him sometimes. But yeah, so there's a lot of science in this show, and it's well thought out science. I've heard people waxing lyrical in various other podcasts and things lately about certain movies that, you know, had video calls in the 90s and early 2000s before it became a thing. And this movie had video calls as well. I think for people who are projecting forward with sci-fi, they knew video calls were coming. It was kind of obvious. Back to the Future Part 2, this movie.
Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey, yes, which was much earlier. But I'm kind of thinking about the 90s and the early noughties. Matrix, did Matrix have video calls? No, I don't think they did. They just used headphones.
Yeah. Matrix did.
Total Recall had video headphones.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, if you had a really hard think about it for about 5 seconds, you would have picked up that video calls were going to become a thing. And they did. So that was, I mean, it's not the first movie to suggest that video calls would be a thing, but certainly it was well considered that, you know, in that group of movies that saw it coming. So, I mean, that's a tick in a box right there, saying that the movie was, the people who did the science advising on the movie were good at their job. Hover cars. Now, it makes sense to have a hover car on the moon, being 1/6 Earth gravity. You don't need a lot of effort to keep something hovering off the ground. There's also a lot of dust on the moon. So, you know, if you're rolling along the moon's surface, you might throw up a lot of dust and it would get into the gears and the wheels and everything and gum everything up. So having something that hovered and wasn't touching down on the ground all the time would probably be a good move. It was also interesting the way the cars were designed, in that they were more of a sort of a van than a straight up car. You had one door at the back and you got into the car and it was self-contained, kind of like a little van or mobile home kind of deal. So I thought the designs were quite good. They predicted self-driving cars. Didn't know that it was going to be there was going to be John Cleese hamming it up in the digital driver's seat, but he did a fantastic job. But yeah, self-driving cars, they were predicting that, and hover cars, and of course the whole idea of you got to put your spacesuit on before you go out of the car, and then you come in and it repressurizes, made a whole lot of sense. It was sensible. And, you know, it was scientific-y, and it was sensible. I mean, science doesn't have to be mind-blowing. It just has to be sensible. And then you can feel that it's a consumer technology that you would expect in that environment after a certain amount of time and development. So I really thought they did a good job there. Now, in general, moon colonies are planned. I've been through this in the main topic, but they'll start out being governmental and corporate, and maybe military. I don't know. But eventually they will, start to be more general, more sort of. There will be support businesses that will be set up to support the larger bodies, governments and things like that, because government bodies and corporations don't want to have to do all that little shit, and that's why there is a space for, no pun intended, there is a space for in growing colonies on the moon for small businesses to provide entertainment, to provide food options. Because, there will be very limited amount of options to start with, but people always want to go out and have a nice meal, go out to entertainment, go out and seek pleasure in whatever form it happens to be. And where there's a demand, there is generally a business that wants to provide that and make money out of it. So, I mean, that's how society works. And if you're building society on another planetary body, you will need that eventually. So I think that it makes sense that would happen. Now, everybody knows that I bang on about gravity. Gravity is really important. If you are more than about 85% of Earth's gravity or more than 15% over, it's going to start having bad effects on the human body. Now, the moon is 1/6 Earth gravity, 1/6. I've complained about Mars being 1/3. This is half again. What it's going to do to people's bodies? It's going to fuck them. People are not going to do so well. However, one of the first things that they show is a sign that said, be prepared for normal gravity when they're driving into Little America, which means that they have some way of modifying the gravity plates or some sort of modified singularity or something that's going to produce enough gravity to simulate Earth normal. And it made sense to have that sign there to keep me happy, because I would bitch about it if they weren't bouncing all over the place. And to make it sensible that people could live there without having horrible deformities. If you were to have a baby develop in space with no gravity, the baby's development would be quite probably very abnormal, to the point where it mightn't even reach term, because human bodies require gravity to form properly. If you look at shows like The Expanse, they talk about the belters who've grown up living on asteroids in the belt. They're really tall and skinny, and if they go back to Earth, it crushes them because they're not used to the gravity. Now, that's one way of looking at it. I personally think that if people tried to be born and grow up on a asteroid that is significantly lower gravity than even the moon, because it's smaller, they'd have even more problems. People on the International Space Station, which is not that far from Earth, have to exercise for like 4 to 6 hours a day to try and keep their bodies from degenerating because they don't have gravity. The way they move around is completely different from what we do on Earth, and your muscles, it's the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. And your muscles will degenerate horrifically if you are up in space for significant periods of time. So the fact that whoever was advising them said, put this sign in right at the beginning saying, prepare for normal gravity, they hit the nail right on the head. The fact that if you were driving along in a hover car on a freeway on the surface of the moon, you'd only be experiencing 1/6 gravity. Certainly it would make fuel consumption way better, because you wouldn't have to put as much energy into resisting the pull of gravity from the moon's surface. And also, you couldn't live for all that long in 1/6 gravity without having physiological issues, your muscles degenerating, your bones, losing bone mass, all that sort of thing. Your organs would start to fail because they just don't have the right environment. They don't have the right gravity to keep them going. 1/6 is just way too little. So the fact that they've somehow got a technology that gives Earth normal gravity within these domes is a requirement to survive up there for long periods of time. And it solves the problem of having to have everybody in the show bounce around all the time with huge amounts of expense for wire work and all that for every single person in the movie. They could walk around on a set and just treat it as normal from that one side. It was very smart.
Yep.
So, I've congratulated the science advisors for this movie and the production staff for listening to them, because sometimes they don't. But I mean, there were scenes in this movie where they were outside of domes and they were bouncing around like Neil Armstrong was on the moon, and it made sense because they weren't in a dome. But whenever they went into a dome that had artificial gravity to make sure people didn't cark it from physiological disruption, that made sense too, because that's what you'd really need. And we will need a technology like that to make long-term staying on the moon possible, and certainly having babies on the moon, because if you don't have gravity when you're just gestating, I think you're going to be in a lot of trouble. All the advertising that you see in the sweep-throughs, it all really felt like it made sense in the situation of the movie, because if you've got private enterprise, that private enterprise has got to be known, so that you need advertising, and I thought they did a really good job on that as well. In that it sort of felt a little bit Las Vegas, glitzy. It had that sort of a feel, and it just felt quite natural. And the other thing was, as I said earlier, Vice. People want experiences. If you're in a corporate or a governmental enclave on the moon, it's like going to Antarctica. There's nothing. It's going to be the bare minimum because of government budgets or corporate budgets. It's going to be boring. You're going to be up there on the moon with no entertainment, no fun places to go, no vice, which most human beings want. They want to have fun. They want to feel good. The fact that this whole place was pretty much that, to provide that for the people on the moon, makes sense. It really sort of worked in a sociological sense and in a scientific sense, that these things would be there. And as I said before, it really felt comfortable and lived in, which I was really impressed about. Now, one of the other points of the science in this, obviously some of that was social science, but the actual science in this movie, they talk quite a bit about human cloning. So, and interestingly enough, they also brought into the topic of varying legal situations between the Earth and the Moon. Now, the Moon would have started out extraterritorial, so it wouldn't have it would either have its own set of laws which were very minimal, or it would borrow laws from somewhere on Earth. But once it started to get more populated, it would have to come up with its own. No one country would own the Earth, so it could quite well be that in different domes there are different laws based on who owned that dome or what country they claimed to that dome. So you could be looking at almost country hopping, like small countries, all the little burgs in Europe or something like that. Now, whether or not they all band together and make it easier for the people who live there by making it all the same set of laws or not, but it did seem that from what we got from the script, that human cloning was banned on Earth, but it wasn't banned, at least for a certain period of time, on the Moon. So that's how you got the two wives that were identical of what's his name?
Tony Francis.
Thank you, Tony Francis. Yes. So, and yeah, he's amazingly misogynistic comment.
Yes.
Who cares? So yeah, I mean, and human cloning was dropped into the script multiple times to set up for the big reveal, which was interesting. Now, they took his appendix out in prison and used that to clone a copy of Pluto. They must have done some sort of scan on his brain to get his memories, because his clone had his memories as well. So that was interesting. But of course, his clone was a prick. Must have had the more negative sides of his personality expressing themselves more strongly, because he did what he did. But yeah, I mean, from the moment somebody is cloned, they will be experiencing the world slightly differently, and different things will happen to them, and they will make different choices, and their personalities will be shaped differently. So there's this whole thing of genetics and environment, which are both well studied, and no person or pair of people who are genetically identical end up the same because of environment. It's the varying factor. They can't stand in the same place and have exactly the same thing happen to them. If one of them gets something and the other doesn't, when they're small, they may get jealous. They may, one might be caring and the other one might be cold, just because of the way they've been treated. The parents or the parental bodies or whoever's looking after them will not necessarily notice this, thinking that they were trying to treat them exactly the same, but it never works out that way. Even the one that gets handed the thing first the one that gets handed it second may be a little bit jealous because they didn't get handed it first. It's all perception, and everybody perceives things slightly differently. You can't perceive everything exactly the same, even if you're genetically identical to somebody else. You fall over and they don't. You end up with a scar and they don't. The moment the clone is created, they are a separate entity having a separate experience. So you can end up with wildly divergent personalities after 7 years, 8 years, 9 years. I don't know how long he was in jail for. And I found that was quite interesting as well. So human cloning is banned pretty much in all civilized parts of the world already for various reasons. But I'm sure that somewhere, somehow, somebody is still working on it because we're humans. We don't necessarily think why, but can we? So
just because we can.
Yeah, we did it because we could. I still think that we'll see human clones, at least quietly, in various places. And that brings us to the last topic. Did you want to talk about that one? Because you found that website.
Oh, yes. Just find it interesting because of the bullet points, you might want to say. It's interesting facts about the moon. And I think you might want to say Royal. Where's it from? Is it Royal Museum? Let me see here. It's a UK site. Is rmg.co.uk. This is from the Royal Museums, Greenwich. The bullet point number 1: the moon is Earth's only permanent natural satellite. 2 is the moon is the second densest satellite. The other one is
known anyway.
Huh?
Among those that are known anyway. I mean, we've viewed moons around Pluto, but we haven't got anything close enough to test their density or anything.
Yeah. The moon always shows Earth the same face. The moon's surface is actually dark. Although we see a reflection at night, you might think, it's light. No, that's just the sun reflecting up the surface. The sun and the moon are not the same size. I actually chuckled on this one.
Yeah.
Because I can see how someone might think so. Because of when you look at the bodies in the sky, without looking at, the distance between the two, I guess it would be easy to think that, they're the same size, but they're not.
Well, linked to the next point, is the moon is drifting away from the Earth. The moon was originally much, much closer to the Earth when it formed, and it formed by the impact of a planetoid named Theia, which was in the same orbital zone as Earth. And once they got close enough together, their gravities drew them together, and Theia crashed into the Earth. And we had a proto-atmosphere that they believe was similar to Venus. And when Theia struck Earth, it shattered, and part of it became the moon. All the bits that were left orbiting the Earth coalesced into the moon. And it knocked off the proto-atmosphere, allowing the nitrogen, oxygen, CO2 atmosphere to eventually form. It was a nitrogen atmosphere, and then once plant life developed, using the CO2 to create energy and carbon materials for their bodies, and releasing oxygen. And that's how we got the oxygen in the atmosphere. So early bacteria, wasn't actual plants at that stage. If it wasn't for that collision, we'd be more like Venus, which would
Yes.
which would really suck. We would not be here.
It's interesting point is because if you go back and observe, for example, solar eclipses, you could go back to a time where the moon would have eclipsed the sun completely. I think we're not going to see that anymore. The moon is like we said, is going farther away. So now when you look at solar eclipses, it's not going to cover the entire sun anymore. And it's just going to get worse as time passes.
Yes. So it is another one of those amazing fortuitous situations that at this period of time where humanity has risen to an intelligent species able to, think about things like the heavens and the celestial bodies and create devices like cameras to do photography and things like that, that it just so happens that the moon, as it's moving away from the Earth very slowly at 3.8 centimeters per year approximately, that it is the right size or the right distance to be the right size to cause an eclipse. As it says under point 5, which is the sun and the moon are not the same size. From Earth, both the sun and the moon look about the same size, but in fact the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun and is also 400 times closer to the Earth. So it just happened to line up just when we became, sentient and able to think about these things and take photographs of it. So that's pretty amazing.
Awesome. We kind of talk about number 7, although I'm not 100% in agreement with how they said the moon was made when a rock smashed into Earth. Rock?
Well, it's a rock. It's a big rock. It's called a planetoid, boys and girls.
Yeah. I go with planetoid. I don't know why rock, although technically maybe it doesn't, I don't know. The next point is the moon makes the Earth move as well as the tides.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of makes sense with the gravity and, the gravity dance.
Yes.
Like I like to call it.
Every physical body in the solar system affects every other physical body in the solar system because of gravity. Gravity is not a strong force, but it's a very persistent force, you might say. And anything that's orbiting anything else is not actually orbiting the center of the larger body. The two bodies will orbit at a point which is partway between the two based on the two sizes. So if you have two bodies that are of identical size, the point will be directly in the middle and they will orbit around that point. But if you've got a small one and a big one, the small one will orbit around the big one, but it won't orbit around the center. It'll orbit around a point between the center of the two, but way closer to the center of the big one. And that's what Robert's referring to as the gravity dance. And it's the same with the sun. The sun wobbles because of Jupiter mostly, but it wobbles because of gravity as well.
And that's why that gravity dance is so horrible when we have 3 bodies to consider.
3. There's way more than that in the solar system.
No, what I mean, what I'm talking about is, for example, the moon and the Earth, right? They're in close proximity. Well, add another moon. Well, add another planetoid to the. Now it gets a little bit more complicated, and it gets a little more chaotic, and I think that's where the 3-body problem comes into play. I think it's still one of the unsolvable scientific concepts right now. I mean, you can't you could do it with math, but it's very chaotic.
Mm.
You can't really have a solution to that problem. That's why I think that they created that. Well, that's where that show is based on, the three-body problem. The moon has quakes. They're, I laugh because we typically call them earthquakes, but because they're in the moon, they're called moonquakes. So I find that fascinating.
I particularly like moon cakes. Is that similar?
I like that better. And the last point, which is number 10 here, is I think one of the ones that I find very, very interesting and fascinating is there is water on the moon. I remember thinking back, way back when I was younger. I remember finding the concept of water on the moon to be I don't want to say impossible, but like unrealistic. And some time down my path in reading, I discovered that there is actually water on the moon, and I think this is a concept that is very easy for someone to say, there's not, because I mean we have a place that is, there's no atmosphere there. You open up a bottle of water and it will boil into space. But there is water. It says this is in the form of ice trapped within dust and minerals on and under the surface. It has been detected on areas of the lunar surface that are in the permanent shadow and are therefore very cold, enabling the ice to survive. So we do have water on the moon.
It's just not in like lakes or anything.
It's not how you envision water to be, but there is water.
Well,
there.
the water on the Earth wasn't here at the time when Theia crashed into the Earth, because if it was, it would have been blown off the surface anyway. So if the collision was enough to take the proto-atmosphere off of Earth, it would have taken any standing water off as well. So after that happened and the Earth recovered, recoalesced from the damage and became vaguely spherical again, then the atmosphere would have started redeveloping. And a lot of the water that exists on Earth now came from ice asteroids. Ice asteroids were quite common in the early solar system, and their impacts on the Earth built up the amount of water on the planet. Now, the fact that that doesn't seem to have happened anywhere else is because that we had an atmosphere to keep it in, and a good magnetic field to stop the solar winds from just stripping it off. But that's not the case for pretty much all the other planets. There may be water on Jupiter, but it'll be down near the center and you won't be able to see it or get it. So don't even bother trying. But for the moon would have been getting hit by ice asteroids just like the Earth. So it makes sense that some of it would have got there, but then, of course, the solar winds would strip it back off again. And it's only the fact that the moon is tidally locked to the Earth so that the one side is facing, and that means that it's not spinning really quickly, that you get areas that stay in the dark for long periods, and that's where the ice can survive. It doesn't get defrosted and stripped off by the harsh temperatures when the solar wind and the sun's rays hit a surface that has no atmosphere to reduce the impact. If we didn't have an atmosphere on the Earth and a magnetic field to stop the solar wind and the solar radiation from, giving us 100%, we'd get nuked in minutes. So it's pretty harsh up there. If you could breathe, but you didn't have a spacesuit on, you would get cooked if you're in the sun, and you would freeze into an ice brick very quickly in the shade. So that's the variation of temperature up on the moon. I don't have exact numbers, but it would be harsh. So, as I've said before, space is not kind to humans. Theoretically, we're not meant to be there, but when has that ever stopped us?
And I think that's what space sounds so cool when you add it to anything else.
Yes, because
it's so
because it's trying to kill us.
Space cat, space table, space car. Yeah, it sounds really cool.
I like them space kitties. We've covered that anime.
Yes, Cat Planet Cuties.
Sure did.
Nice. Okay, I think. Do you have one more thing before?
Oh yeah. There was one more thing. I keep forgetting. Yeah. So it was interesting that they used a lot of robots, mainly for security. I guess because they're supposedly tougher, and if they get shot, it didn't really matter. You could probably either repair them or scrap them if they were too badly gone. But Bruno, the 63 model, it was 2087, and he was a 63 model robot. So he was quite old. He had his idiosyncrasies, but he was very loyal to Pluto, and he had a happiness chip. So even when the ship was going down, he was grinning like an idiot. Which really amused me. Like Pluto was saying, oh, he's got a happiness chip, so he's got that creepy smile on his face all the time. He goes, yeah. He says, is that a good idea? And she says, oh, I wish I had a happiness chip in my ass so I could be happy all the time. It was amusing. I mean, this movie's amusing. You're dead right about the comedy side of it. It's just great. But security robots, probably at least until we work out how we're going to get a mechanical body to work like a human body. And, they're working on it with the robots from Boston Dynamics. If you haven't seen those videos, go look them up on YouTube of the robot, the bipedal robot hopping around and jumping. He moves better than I do some days. So, I mean, it's not impossible to have a humanoid robot that looks like us and kind of talks like us. But using robots for security, it's already a thing. And I brought this up in, I think it was the Science Behind Science Fiction in our Back to the Future Part 2 episode, where they had security robots. And there are some towns in the US that are deploying security robots that you can. It's at this point, it's basically a mobile emergency button, like a emergency help button. But I'm sure as they develop, they will, be pointing out people making or breaking the law or making social mistakes or what have you. And they may even end up, carrying tasers or something like that to subdue violent individuals before police officers can get there.
Or maybe like,
sorry?
Or maybe like RoboCop.
Yeah, that's a bit more intense than I was considering. But yes, maybe like RoboCop at some point. I mean, Bruno was a bit like RoboCop.
Yeah,
he had that same sort of vibe. I liked Bruno. I thought Bruno was a good character.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, I mean, all of these things are sort of coming along as fits and starts. Our technology grows every day, very slowly, but if you hang around long enough, you'll see all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's about all I've got.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, for being with us one more week. We really, really enjoy creating this for you, and I'm really happy that you find this as entertainment, as entertaining as it was for us. We have fun in every one of these episodes. If you want to discuss the thing that we're talking about with us, there's avenues we could do this. You can join us on Discord. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can just scan the QR code on the screen, and that should be the invite to our Discord channel. If you are listening on our pods, there's going to be a link to the invite on the description. So join us. Let's talk about this particular. We have questions for you. We want to know if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what was your perspective on it. Let's talk about it in our Discord channel. We also invite you to reach out in the Discord and let us know, if you any of the episodes that we have discussed previously, or if you have an episode that we haven't covered that you'd like us to cover. We also have a website. We do. And in this website, it is sciencefictionremnant.com. You could buy a scientific shirt and be hip. In this website, you can find some of the episodes of where you can find us, and if you have a specific pod chaser that you use, you can find a link to it there for any of the episodes that we have released. You could also find articles that we have written, and there has been some guest writers on them on occasion. The cool thing about is that it doesn't take long to read the articles. It's along the lines of what we do here. And their articles take anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes to read. Really, really interesting articles. On the website, again, is sciencefictionremnant.com. All one word, no spaces. Now, if you are a creator, we have a website too. That website is scifi.net, all together. No spaces. And it is a thing that we're trying to do. It is in its infancy. So if you're a creator of sci-fi content, I welcome you to go to the site and get the idea, read about what we're trying to do, reach out to us, and you could be on the very first, the initial birth of this one thing that we're trying to do. And basically what it is we're trying to replicate what this is sci-fi hashtag is doing, and just making it in a way where we can discuss and see how we could not only help each other, when it comes to sci-fi, but help the sci-fi community as a whole. Now, if you like to help us produce the show, we do have a way you could do that. You could join our Patreon. We have a Patreon site. Join us there. You can support the show and help us produce more content for you. And you could reach us to. Right now we have the episodes without commercial break. It's just the plain old discussions. But if you have ideas of what you like to see on there, you can reach out to us and let us know. But that would be one way that you can help produce the show. Now, if you're wondering, where is Captain Chaos? Well, Captain Chaos was missing his coffee.
Oh, poor boy.
So if you want to help keep Captain Chaos on this show, you can help us buy him a coffee. Go to Buy Me a Coffee. We have a link on the screen. And you can help the show that way. We also have a hotline. So hot, only Captain Chaos can manage it. And the phone number is 305-563-6334. You can call the number 305-563-6334. You can leave a message for any of the hosts. You can leave a message for Chaos, tell him that you'll get him his coffee soon, to just hold off. You can talk about any of the episodes we have discussed, or if you have any episodes that you like us to discuss, or any comments that you might have. And what we'll do is we'll play those in the next episode and we'll talk around it and have a conversation. So again, that number is 305-563-6334. Now, thank you very much for joining us. Check our back catalog for IPs you enjoy that we have covered in the past. Also, feel free to reach out on Discord and let us know if you would like us to cover something that we haven't covered that you enjoy. So reach out, and we can't wait to have you interact with us. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support. And see you next time.
Bye-bye.